Chapter 251 Winning Without Fighting. The Lich King left without even saying a harsh word. The old guys and young people on the walls of the Magic Tower Fortress were stunned. Is this an actor? Actors are not so fake, right? Xiao Yun is so powerful? Then why does this kid need others to help him? A group of people were puzzled and didn't understand why. Of course, Xiao Yun would not explain. He just sent the shadows to dispel the undead fog or absorb the undead fog after scaring away the Lich King, because he found that black magic could devour a lot of magic power, or erode it, and his dark power was one of the most original and powerful forces in the world, and the degree of devouring was much stronger than black magic. This was also one of the reasons why the Lich King escaped. In addition, the Lich King really didn't have enough manpower. Facing Xiao Yun and the shadows, it couldn't fight, unless it was in the cemetery of the Demon City. It would have a little confidence to fight Xiao Yun to the death. The reason why the Lich King now has time to lead troops to resist is that after Xiao Yun's invasion last time, the demons almost reached a consensus. Facing Xiao Yun, a perverted guy, they have to take certain measures. Therefore, the Lich King became the target of the Demon Kings. Again, because the Lich King refined some Demon Kings who had reached the end of their lives and were about to die into undead, the undead of various races have always existed. So the Demon Kings now are Demon Kings in name, but in fact, all decisions about the major races must be made by those undead Demon Kings. These young Demon Kings of the younger generation do not have any say, and even feel a little weak. The name of the Lich King is partly because it is the King of Liches, and the other part is a bit of a dominance of the Demon Clan. This guy's power in the Demon Clan is too great, and many people are jealous. This time it was sent out for this reason. Sending it out will cause it to suffer some losses, and other problems will definitely arise when its power is damaged. As long as there is a battle, there will be losses, which is normal. To put it bluntly, it is an internal struggle. 3 days later, inside the Magic Tower Fortress. Why don't you just kill them if you have the strength? Instead, you want us to charge into battle. In the internal meeting room, Xiao Yun sat calmly in the main seat, and didn't say much, just quietly watching the leaders of various families who were chattering. Most of the demon leaders in the meeting room now live in the kingdom area. Their thinking is basically the same as that of humans, and they also deeply understand what humans hate and like. After all, the one who knows you best is always the enemy. So now when they talk about it, it is true that the Lord's Vein was almost captured, and there are many strong people among them. If they guard a piece of land, there will be absolutely no problem, especially the Lord's Vein, which has many benefits for monsters. In addition, Xiao Yun also promised them that he could let them pass through the high tower fortress, that is, they can contact with the territory inside the kingdom, and they don't have to worry about being hit again. This is very good, and the current negotiations are also for this reason, but what they can't accept is that Xiao Yun sits in the back and doesn't work, just watching the show. Isn't this sending them to die in vain? It is acceptable to have casualties in the battle for territory. This is a normal process. Everyone knows, understands, and knows this. But one thing is that they will not foolishly provoke the Demon King. Each family does have powerful existences, there is no doubt about this, otherwise they would not have existed in the kingdom for so long, and even formed a cancer-like existence. But everyone knows what kind of powerful existence exists in the Demon King Valley, so they will not foolishly provoke each other. To put it bluntly, they want to go back on their promises before, and they turn their faces and disown people after getting the benefits. It means that the benefits are taken, and the work is not done. Xiao Yun was too lazy to be hypocritical with them and directly pointed out the matter. The people looked at each other and didn't know what to say, but their eyes had proved that they really didn't want to do anything. The benefits were collected, so what was the use of talking about promises? Value determines the reliability of the contract. Xiao Yun's value ended after a part of the Lord's Vein was occupied. These monsters have already regarded Xiao Yun's value and the bottom line, and their own value is very useful to Xiao Yun, so now the level of this negotiation is immediately distinguished. This negotiation has been unfair from the beginning. That's right, we're leaving now, you can do whatever you want. The monsters slammed the table, as if they had agreed, and got up and left directly. Xiao Yun, however, did not call them out unusually. It seemed that their departure was just an ordinary and insignificant matter. Now the others were unsure of Xiao Yun's thoughts. In fact, their current behavior was to force the palace. If it succeeded, Xiao Yun would unconditionally open the passage to the Magic Tower Fortress for them, so that they could get a lot of benefits without bloodshed, and at the very least they could get some money from Xiao Yun. But now this guy just watched them leave quietly. If they didn't leave, they would lose face today. Originally, they wanted to threaten Xiao Yun to achieve their goal, but now it seems to fail. Xiao Yun had thought about it long ago. These people would definitely make trouble if they thought they had some effect. So he took into account the superiority and benefits of the Magic Tower Fortress. Let them see the benefits, but Xiao Yun's Magic Tower Fortress is firmly inserted between the two. If they want to pass through, they must occupy the Magic Tower Fortress, or Xiao Yun is dead. Of course, these two possibilities will not happen. Don't regret it. After thinking for a while, the leaders of the demon clan all got up and left. But the place they went to was the inland of the kingdom, not the Lord's Vein. That's right, after all, they didn't want to become unlucky ghosts who were attacked from all sides. Facing the Demon King face to face, they also had to consider Xiao Yun's revenge behind their backs, but they were not that stupid. So, not long after they left, the old man in the blacksmith shop and others were still there. Their goal was naturally to defeat all the Demon Kings, even if it was just to prove that they were right when they were young. They had to defeat the Demon King. So they didn't leave, their ideas were very firm, and the brave man actually wanted to leave a long time ago, but the brave man was helpless. Although his heart has changed a little, the decision made by the hero in his early years seems to have deeply affected him. Half want to run, half want to stay. What should we do next? They have turned against us, and we have no other helpers. The kingdom is in chaos again. Xiao Yun cast his eyes in the direction of the old man in the blacksmith shop. The old man in the blacksmith shop fell into silence. Although I knew that this trip was dangerous and would not be completed easily before I came, I really didn't expect it to be so difficult. Chapter 252 Firefly Army. However, since I have come here, and even prepared everything I should have before coming, I will naturally not be afraid of difficulties. They have a backup plan, so doesn't the old man have a backup plan? Obviously, the old man also has a backup plan. After all, you can't always bet all your retreat on others, you have to make some preparations yourself. Just like Xiao Yun now, the backup is the Magic Tower Fortress, and these monsters dare not attack recklessly. After all, part of the reason why they agreed to go on the expedition now is because the Magic Tower Fortress blocked their steps, and it became very difficult to evacuate or stay. In the entire kingdom continent, most of the revived true gods are human true gods. These true gods maintain an attitude of killing monsters. Even if there are strong monsters, they still can't avoid lingering. So now going on the expedition is to seek a way out, but their way out is blocked by Xiao Yun. Originally, they wanted to raise the price and achieve their goals while Xiao Yun still needs them and hasn't achieved their goals, and then get rid of Xiao Yun. This is the best result for them, no one else. Unfortunately, Xiao Yun discovered this, and their plan fell through. Now the old man seems to know what this means, so he silently got up and walked out of the tower. After all, he has lived for so long, and he will see and know a lot more things. So when he saw these people evacuating, the old man's backup option appeared. There were many people accompanying this trip, most of them were humans, and among these humans, the older people accounted for more, and there were few young people, and the performance of these people was very ordinary. Perhaps in the eyes of ordinary people, these people were already very elite, but they just felt that they were inexplicably a little bit worse. But at this moment, when they saw the old man appear, these people all looked over at the same time. Apart from anything else, the scene of scaring away the Lich King before was enough to make the old man believe in Xiao Yun, and he had to pay a little price for him. If you are fooled, then take it as a lesson. Anyway, you have survived for many years, and it doesn't matter if you have a short time. It's time, the responsibility that your family should bear is at this moment. The old man said loudly, and many residents in the city also heard this, but they were confused. What is going on? Of course, I won't stop anyone who wants to leave. This is your right. After the old man finished speaking, he stood up and walked out of the city. Even though his injuries had not yet healed and he was slightly contaminated by the undead mist, his whole spirit was obviously not very good now, but he still resolutely set out for the city. Xiao Yun originally wanted to take Xiao Shu and Qingya with him. But the two women refused to go this time and showed extreme resistance. Xiao Yun had no choice but to let them stay here. In fact, the two of them just didn't want to cause trouble. Although the combat effectiveness of the two exceeded that of many people, even the top of this direct, they were more certain that Xiao Yun would always focus on the two of them. If something went wrong, it would definitely distract him. In this case, it would be better to stay. They were not like the Black Shadow Corps, who would throw them away after use and were not afraid of casualties. Xiao Yun didn't dare to say much. He didn't dare to interfere too much with the decisions of the ants and adults, so he set off again with these troops alone. The monsters who stayed in the city to discuss the situation sneered. To put it bluntly, without these monster cannon fodders, Xiao Yun is nothing. The combat effectiveness of these key troops of the old man is extraordinary. As the saying goes, good steel should be used on the tip of the knife. When these elite troops burst out their true combat effectiveness, they will be close to death. Even some of these elite troops will never use this powerful force in their entire lives, so they can even exist forever. Unfortunately, after the fireflies burst out the last faint light of their lives, they will dissipate and die. These people are also called the Firefly Army. Now that the Firefly Army has been triggered, they are also happy to see this scene. Because Xiao Yun's defeat will make their value sublimate again. The combat effectiveness of these demons and monsters has been raised to the extreme at the beginning, with the purpose of showing their value and muscles to Xiao Yun. This strategy seems to have been half successful. Next, as long as Xiao Yun and his team fail this time, they will definitely come back to beg them. Top combat power is always an indispensable factor for victory in a battle. Although the Firefly Army is strong, they can never pass the Lord's vein. The undead fog has polluted most of the Lord's veins. The monsters may not be affected, and fighting in it will be even stronger than usual. After all, now is not the time when the undead fog has just erupted. Even the Lich himself will be deeply affected by the undead fog that has just erupted. But the power of nature is always strong. The undead fog, which is rejected by the world and the purest power, will find this power at the first time and then remove it. Under the clarity and correction of nature, the power of the undead fog will gradually weaken until it finally becomes ordinary fog. In a place like the magic world where there is no lack of power, the dissipation of the undead fog will naturally be faster. The demons are like fish in water in front of this weakened power. The corrosion is greatly reduced and the controllability is stronger, which is equivalent to having an extra arm. It will naturally have a little advantage when punching. Moreover, the Demon King Valley is not a place where the humans can run wild. Do you really think those demon kings are vegetarians? They all think they are made of mud, and it is difficult for them to survive. The demons of the kingdom believe that Xiao Yun will definitely fail on this trip. However, things are never determined by ideas, but by facts. Mr. Xiao, for the Demon King Valley, you. In front of the Lord's vein, watching people continue to die, the old man's heart is full of helplessness. Since the escape of the Lich King, his name for Xiao Yun has changed. Originally, he looked down on this young man who was willing to fight against the demons. After all, everyone is young and frivolous. He knows better than anyone what the Demon King Valley is, so he looked down on Xiao Yun and thought that he was just playing house as a child and treating the Demon King Valley as a trip. But after the Lich King escaped, he was horrified to find that this kid seemed to be more powerful and terrifying than he thought. Both strength and strategy were not bad, especially the two girls. One of them had the breath of natural power, and the other seemed to be one with him. The breath was no different, at least he could not detect it. I couldn't see through it, and it became more and more difficult to see through it. Chapter 253 Utilization. Originally, I wanted to use this kid at the beginning, just in time to solve my own knot. I couldn't always live such a cowardly life and deceive myself all the time, right? In order to prove that his life was not lived in vain, he came. Unexpectedly, he found that this kid seemed to be able to prove all his statements. Not lived in vain. He didn't live in vain. It's all worth it. Worth it. It's all worth it. As the army advanced, it appeared in front of them more and more demons resisted, but under the light of the Firefly Army, these demons turned into ashes, and like fireflies, they dissipated in the vast world and turned into the purest power. Both sides advanced and retreated rapidly with the same consumption. As casualties continued to increase, the army moved faster and faster. Until they arrived at the Demon Valley, it was unknown how many times the demon army had been defeated and retreated to the Demon Valley. It is no exaggeration to say that all this is very shameful. They failed several times and were beaten to their doorstep. They had stayed indoors before, mainly because they were weak and alone. They also knew that their advantage was their large number, but their own pride told them that it was unreliable to cooperate with others, and it was better to rely on themselves. As for the fox borrowing the power of the tiger? Basically, forget it, they have their own pride. But now, after experiencing the scene where Xiao Yun almost killed them all, they found that face was not that important. After all, the things that were thrown once still hurt after being thrown again, but at least it was not as painful as the first time. As for embarrassment, I am good at it. Too good at it. I know it. I know it. I can do it. So much so that, because they were used to it and even saw the situation clearly, the demon kings began to unite, and even invited back the 7 ancient demon gods that were previously beaten away by Xiao Yun, although there were only 3 left of the 7 sects now. Originally there were 4 or 5 left, but because of some accidents on the road, there were only 3 left now. However, the demons are now almost mobilizing all the forces they can mobilize. There is no way, they are afraid of death and afraid of losing. They can't retreat to the demon god realm again, right? It would be nice to be seen by their ancestors and their parents. In order not to embarrass themselves, they chose to be shameless and directly united to bully the weak. Now all the demon kings gathered in front of the demon valley, each showing their most powerful fighting posture. Even the Lich King who had escaped before was there, but the Lich King's breath was obviously a little weaker, obviously he had not recovered from his injuries. But now the demon kings have put aside their past grudges and started to gather together. How can they give up this good opportunity? Defeat the human army and occupy their kingdom. This opportunity is simply a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So, a group of demon kings appeared in front of everyone with full fighting spirit. The old man in the blacksmith shop thought deeply for a while, and then took off the long sword behind him. His injuries were not healed, but he would not hesitate at this moment. The battle is over, don't worry about it. You don't know how you will die later. The demon kings also sneered and approached here. The old man's face was extremely solemn, so he turned his eyes to Xiao Yun, who was standing behind him and looked like he wanted to watch the show. It would be better if he didn't watch it, but if he did, he would scare the demon kings to death. Following the old man's gaze, I saw a young man's face appearing in front of me, and this face was comparable to the devil in hell. When they were young, the demon kings would always hear their mothers and fathers tell a story. The disobedient demons would be captured by terrible humans and made into clothes and shoes. Even become coolies and slaves. What is the most terrible thing for the demons? Not death, but shame. Being captured by humans and turned into slaves is a suffering they would rather die than endure. I have had this thought since I was a child, so I am always scared when I hear this story. Will someone come to capture me and turn me into a child under my feet? Will I become a slave and be driven by humans? But this worry and this story gradually became boring as I grew older. Yes, it is boring. Their strength is much worse than before. It's not that they are worse, but that they are stronger. Compared with listening to stories before, they are now storytellers. Hardened, wings hardened, fists hardened, they are different now. However, the moment he saw Xiao Yun, the image that emerged in his mind was actually when he was lying in his mother's arms and listening to her stories. The fear, unwillingness, and regret all took root in his heart. Why was he born in the demon clan? Why did he have to meet such a person at this time? Not only was he so powerful, but the magic technology in the hands of those black shadows also made their scalps numb. What happened to this world? Has the synonym of powerful changed from demon clan to human? Unacceptable, unacceptable. Many demon kings rubbed their feet and said nothing. They were familiar with this scene. Now the good demon kings should go home and sleep, instead of being ignorant of life and death here. Go directly to the demon god realm. The Lich King was stunned. It knew that Xiao Yun was coming, but the other demon kings didn't know, but it really didn't expect that Xiao Yun's arrival would make these demon kings so scared. Even at this moment, the Lich King felt that his bones were soft. Although it was an illusion, he just felt that his bones were soft. This kid, too scary, just seeing him makes my scalp tingle. The battles these days have made this kid stronger. With casualties, Xiao Yun's absorption of dark power has grown stronger and stronger, and now his strength has become particularly terrifying, and even the Lich King can't see through him. Not to mention the Lich King, those demon kings felt that there was a mountain standing in front of them. All the things in the past appeared before their eyes, and the demon kings couldn't help but shed tears. Wrong, wrong. I shouldn't have been so naughty before. I should have listened to my mother and been a good demon, instead of studying hard and making progress every day. Why don't you learn anything else, but actually learn to study hard like humans? It's simply a crooked and evil way. Unfortunately, it's too late to say anything now. Do you think the demon law enforcers will listen to your explanation? Everything will be discussed in the demon prison. Unfortunately, they can't go to prison, because today, they will become naughty children or slaves. Mom! Some demon kings knelt down and cried. And the old man was stunned. It is certain that the battlefield is unpredictable and ever-changing, but he never expected it to turn out like this. Even now, he has the illusion of bullying, thinking that he has gone too far and should apologize to the other party. No, he hasn't done anything yet. If he cries like this, he will inevitably lose his arms and legs in a fight. What can he do? Ahem. Xiao Yun took a few steps forward. And Xiao Yun took a few steps, and the demon kings took a few steps back. The old man didn't dare to speak. The demons of the kingdom who followed far behind to explore intelligence stood there with their mouths wide open, pointing at the scene in front of them for a long time without saying a word. Chapter 254 How is it possible? At this moment, they feel like stupid donkeys. Others have given them a step down, but they still have to be carried in a sedan chair. Now, the steps have been removed, and others are sitting in the sedan chair. They are really living stupid donkeys. Is it useful to regret it? No. And from the look of Xiao Yun, he probably won't cooperate with them. Xiao Yun doesn't lack some black shadows now, just like at the beginning, all the power has a reserve amount, and it can be used when something happens. After all, you can't rely on others for everything. Now it's like this, the moment the black shadows appeared, they scared everyone present. All of them are level 100, and after a preliminary understanding of the changes in this world these days, they found that the weapons in the hands of the black shadows are all magic technology. And the power inside this magic technology makes them feel terrified. This is not an ordinary magic tool. Compared to this, the monsters who regretted it so much that they wanted to rush up and kneel in front of Xiao Yun's feet, hug his feet and beg him to agree to let them serve again. Originally, according to normal cooperation, even if they really suffered a lot of losses, most of the territory of the Lord's veins should belong to them. Even if not all, they can get at least half, right? However, they don't want to work hard when they see the benefits, and they probably think that Xiao Yun can't do anything to them, so they are inflated. As a result, now, I really don't know how to describe the fighting power shown by this guy. Regret, is it too late to regret? Their current value has changed from cannon fodder to even less than ash. Isn't your excellency a little too much? My demon clan is not something you can come and go as you please. If you don't give an explanation, my demon clan will not agree. Finally, a stubborn demon king stood up and scolded Xiao Yun. The last incident was enough to embarrass them. Fortunately, it was not known by humans, otherwise they probably wouldn't dare to come out now. And now, seeing Xiao Yun coming with a large number of people to cause trouble in a big way, how can they not be anxious? It's not fun to let people know that you are embarrassed. In the future, anyone dares to come and step on you. Although it doesn't hurt, the footprints are disgusting. Who will step on your face? Isn't your face full of footprints? It's not bullying, but I need you to make way for me. I have no intention of fighting to the death with all the demon kings, but if anyone stands in my way, I will fight to the end. Xiao Yun originally wanted to say something tougher, such as insulting the demons, saying that the demons are not enough, and even planned to stimulate them by saying that they were beaten back to the demon god's territory by him last time. But then he thought, if he offended them too much, there would be no benefit except fighting to the end. So now they should look good, as long as they are not stupid, no one will take these beautiful words apart. So, all the demon kings of the demon clan looked in the direction of Xiao Yun and frowned, as if they were wondering how credible Xiao Yun's words were. He is afraid of us? This kid can't do anything to us. Some demon kings who were not very smart immediately frowned when they heard Xiao Yun's words of admitting some cowardice, and even muttered loudly, leading some wavering demon kings to look at this side with very bloodthirsty eyes. Pa! After a crisp sound, another devil with a sullen face slapped this guy on the head fiercely. Waste! Others give you face. Are you shameless or no brain? Obviously this demon king is brainless, but there is no way, he has to admit it, this matter is not something that the demons can decide. Xiao Yun has given them face, now it depends on whether they want this face. If they are shameless, they will definitely suffer when the fight comes. The last incident is still vivid. Get out of the way. The demon kings exchanged glances with each other, as if to confirm the feasibility of this statement. In front of so many people, although giving way will cause loss of face, it is better than being crushed by Xiao Yun. Imagine, if they are crushed by a person's summoned beast and become unrecognizable, how much face can they retain? So in the end, the decision made by all the demon kings was to give way. However, all the demon kings do not include the Lich King. No. Are you crazy? The secret of the center of the world belongs to our demons. Let humans set foot, what do you think? The Lich King screamed like crazy. Unfortunately, the other demon kings would not react to this. After all, this guy's ideas were not the same as theirs. Moreover, the demon kings had always been at odds with the Lich King, and there was a deep rift between them. The demon kings wished that he would die sooner, so that the overall strength of the demon race would be greatly improved, instead of the fact that the Lich King turned many demon kings into liches and these demon kings could only be puppets. The so-called demon king should have his own territory and voice, and have the right to command and control his own tribe, rather than a puppet who listens to a pile of bones pointing and arguing behind him, and he can only obey everything. So when the Lich King shouted like crazy, they just silently ignored this guy's hysterical shouting, and silently stood up and made way. The secret of the center of the world is the key to the survival of my demon race. If it is handed over to an outsider, do you know what the end will be? The Lich King screamed again, and this time its words surprised many demon kings, who even stopped moving, and the aura around them became a little strange. Humans and demons have always been at odds with each other, and can even be said to be natural enemies. But now Xiao Yun is so persistent that he doesn't conflict with them, but wants to go to the secret guarded by the center of the world. This is indeed a bit problematic. What people fear most is not lies, but presumptuous associations. It's not easy to convince a person, but it's easy to deceive yourself. Just imagine, who would really guard against their subconscious? Why would a complete and original self be guarded against by himself? Why would a normal person who is not schizophrenic be guarded against himself? So, after the Lich King just casually threw out a possibility that seemed normal and real, these demon kings were directly conquered by their own thoughts. If this is true, Xiao Yun is worthy of death. Exterminate the demons? Doesn't it mean that all the demon kings' tribes and themselves will be destroyed? In that case, it seems that there is no need to fight, and try to avoid wasting combat power. It would be good to fight for the consolidation of one's own strength and status in the future. Only a fool would go to fight stupidly when it is clear that poisoning will work, so that people can catch him. The demon kings stopped in their tracks instantly and stood there stupidly, or rather, they stood there firmly. How could he destroy his own race? How could it be possible? Chapter 255 The Determination of the Demon King. The demon kings who were emotionally mobilized in an instant stopped in their tracks, and many people present had their own thoughts. The monsters in the back were delighted when they saw this situation. There was a chance. Their value finally came back. This was a good opportunity. Originally, they were regretting it, but now it seemed that they had to fight to the death, which meant that their chance had come again. Even if the appearance of the shadows can solve some of the top combat power problems, now they are stuck in a stalemate because of the life and death of the demons. The demon kings will definitely cherish their feathers and will not fight with people foolishly. After all, they are of noble status. How can they fight with some low-status humans? As for the life and death of the demons, they don't care. The memories of the demons are engraved in their bones. They have the world's top inherited memories. So they know what happened better than anyone else. But now the attitude of the demon kings is not right, as if they are plotting something. Xiao Yun's face also sank. These guys started to play tricks again. And the intention of the Lich King seems not only to remind them that the secret of the center of the world involves the demise of the demons, but also some kind of indirect criticism, which seems to have other meanings. What other plans do the demons have? Xiao Yun saw it from their reactions. At least Xiao Yun knew about the inheritance of the demon clan's memory. There was no reason why the Lich King's Lich bloodline could know more than other demon kings. And now the Lich King just wanted to make a special point and let them care. Maybe the secret of the center has been discovered? Xiao Yun touched his chin and thought deeply. To be honest, the reason why he cares about the secret of the world center is because the world center is a teleportation array that can reach another world. He dare not think about what will happen if the teleportation array is opened, whether it will reach another world or summon some powerful enemies to this world. Because he dare not think about it, Xiao Yun is now going to seal the teleportation array. It is enough for Qinjia and Xiao Shu to be in this world. So it is necessary to seal the portal of that world. As a result, the Lich King is so determined now, which makes things difficult. Xiao Yun was silent. This matter seems to be very important to the demons. It is not appropriate to have too serious a conflict with them for the time being. If Xiao Yun was not worried that he would make a big noise after entering the world center, he would have sneaked into the world center and opened it. The demons living here are not just living, they have many ways to preserve their strength. If you enter without permission, you will be surrounded and then crushed into pieces. In order to prevent this from happening, Xiao Yun can only think of another way. A frontal attack is not very good, and sneaking in is impossible. What else can be done? Looking at these demon kings repeatedly, Xiao Yun didn't know what to do, but the pressure of the demon kings present was inadvertently spreading, and some people with a slightly lower level would feel uncomfortable. If there were no strong people around to help, these people might have fled long ago. Demon King. That's right. Demon King. Xiao Yun raised his eyebrows, smiled at the corners of his mouth, and an undetectable black line spread from the ground to the camp of the other demon kings. Xiao Yun didn't want to attack, but to absorb some demon energy. Just when the black shadow power found the target and absorbed almost all the demon energy in its body, a demon king in the demon king camp fell directly to the ground. Plop! After a muffled sound, the demon king fell to the ground. Although the demon kings were all shocked, they didn't say anything, but just looked at Xiao Yun silently with a solemn expression. They didn't want to talk. What they wanted now was attitude. In that case, there's nothing to talk about. Goodbye first. Xiao Yun clasped his fists and stood up to leave. And those around Xiao Yun frowned. It was obvious that they didn't want to retreat like this. After all, the fighting power shown by Xiao Yun could completely destroy a large part of the demon kings. Mainly because they heard that Xiao Yun wanted to use the secret of the center of the world to destroy the demons, so they were a little excited. Unexpectedly, the attitude of the demons was so firm, and Xiao Yun admitted his weakness immediately. It must be said that this was a serious blow to the morale of the army. But the brave man was in a daze from beginning to end. Xiao Yun's strength was much stronger than he thought. He even had the idea of controlling Xiao Yun directly, but now it seems that this idea is too naive. So much so that the hero now feels like he has no desire to live. It's too troublesome, Xiao Yun is very troublesome. Of course, Xiao Yun didn't care so much, just took the mighty army back the way he came. His plan has to change. It can't be so unchanging. If the demons study the secrets of the center of the world thoroughly, it will definitely be a disaster. The Lich King has no good intentions towards him. The power of the entire demon clan is gathered in its hands, which makes Xiao Yun feel an extreme sense of crisis. So going back now is to plan other plans better. A few days later, a hunched figure in a black robe appeared in the outer area of the Lord's Vein. He leaned on a cane and appeared lightly in the outer area of the Lord's Vein, wandering around. He carried a black backpack on his back and looked very exquisite. If the Lich King was here, he would definitely find that this guy's attire and some of the patterns on his body are very similar to the great sage and prophet of the demon race. Unfortunately, the Lich King is not here, otherwise he would definitely try his best to get rid of this guy who will greatly affect his future ruling position. At this moment, the situation of the Lord's Vein is extremely anxious. The reason is that because of the attack launched by Xiao Yun, most of the monsters in the inland of the kingdom have now invaded this place in large numbers and occupied most of the areas. And now, hearing that a black figure suddenly appeared and was moving towards this side, the Elf King who occupied this area fell into deep thought. Listening to the description, this guy is a bit like the great prophet of the demon race. The demons in the kingdom are actually not much different from the demons in the center of the world, but the living environment and habits are not quite the same. Already, apart from these, they are basically no different from other demons, and they are all very ordinary. So when he heard that the great prophet might appear here, the Elf King immediately appeared at the outermost periphery to check and deal with the problem. Once there is any danger or something like that, he will make a decision immediately. This is his first reaction as a king. Young Elf King, can I ask for some water? The great prophet came to the Elf King, stretched out his dry and skinny hand, raised his drooping head and eyelids, looked at the Elf King in front of him in exquisite uniforms and asked. The Elf King swallowed his saliva, and the person in front of him was like a pitch-black vortex that was constantly dazzling, as if to tear everything apart and devour it. He couldn't see through it, he couldn't see through this old man. Chapter 256 True God Legion. Alas! Who knew that before the Elf King answered, the great prophet sighed silently and left. This puzzled the Elf King, and he opened his mouth to ask, "You?" He only cared about one question at this moment, that is, whether the person in front of him was the great prophet. The Elf King did not say another word, but the great prophet had already given the answer. "It seems that there is no water to drink here." As he said that, he sighed and walked deeper into the area of the Lord's land vein. "I'll go now," the Elf King suddenly realized, but when he said this and looked at the place where the old man was standing just now, he found that the man was gone. Block the news. The Elf King clenched his fist and gritted his teeth. The news of the arrival of the great prophet could not be blocked, but all the details just now could not be known to others, so as to let others get the benefits. He was not so stupid. As a result, the news that the great prophet came to the elf clan quickly spread throughout the Lord's land vein, and even many people found out about the whereabouts of the great prophet. Among them was the Lich King. It is said that the Lich King jumped out of the grave on the spot after hearing the news. It seems that he was very surprised and uneasy. But this also gave other demons a message that the arrival of the great prophet might replace the Lich King as the leader or actual controller of the demons. So, the demon kings hurried to find the whereabouts of the great prophet, and sent some people to contain the Lich King, asking some random questions to slow down this guy's pace, and then they found the great prophet and protected him. Although it was a bit strange that the great prophet of the demons appeared at this time, everyone agreed that since the Dark Elf King had identified it as the great prophet, it meant that it must be the great prophet. It's hard to say about the other elves, but the magic perception is definitely first class. Therefore, the demons almost moved out in full force. Of course, the same drama of asking for water is also constantly happening in the various lords' areas of the Lord's veins. Almost everyone who saw the great prophet at the same time would not care what the great prophet said, but asked what they cared about. So no one really cared whether the great prophet had drunk the water. At the same time, Xiao Yun, who was far away in the magic tower fortress, nodded with satisfaction. He was originally worried that his plan would fail directly. After all, how could the demons not recognize their own great prophet? But now the intelligence obtained and the news feedback from the shadows show that the other party has really entered the circle. But now it is not this that is important, but the problem facing the magic tower fortress. The revival of the true God is never a good thing. The revival of strong power means the replacement of the originally strong and the weak. The change of the top strength will cause some of the strong to become weak. This is the case now. The original power of the five kingdoms was not weak, but it was still much worse than that of the true gods. To be honest, each of the true gods is a child of destiny. Now that these geniuses have returned, the first thing is to occupy the status and financial resources equal to their own reputation and strength, so that the originally divided territories and various resources of the five kingdoms have been occupied by 10%. If the five kingdoms had not purchased a large part of the magic technology from Xiao Yun, and if they had no problem defending the city, perhaps their last paradise would have been devoured by those true gods. Of course, they can only defend the city now, and they can't do anything in a corner. After all the territories within the kingdom were separated, the power level of the entire world was completely clear, and all the territories had owners. Then all the true gods turned their attention to the magic tower fortress where Xiao Yun was. The magic tower fortress was built based on these cities in the rear from the beginning. After controlling the mechanisms and magic arrays in the magic tower fortress, it means controlling a large part of the kingdom's regional cities, and part of the defense control of the internal cities will fall into the hands of the tower. So when the tower was built in ancient times, it was a holy place that all kingdoms must control. But now this holy place is controlled by an outsider in the hands of the ancient demon god. Can the true gods be assured? So, the true gods once again united their forces, and like the ancient demon god last time, they gathered a large number of humans. However, this time the army was obviously more elite, just like the strong men summoned by the old man in the blacksmith shop, with very high quality. Xiao Yun was too lazy to explain, and directly sent a large number of black shadows out to deal with these guys. The effect was outstanding, and the opponent was caught off guard almost at the moment of attack, and even the residents in the fortress and some legion adventurers were completely numb. After coming back to his senses from the aftertaste of the ancient demon god last time, he found that all this was actually so plain. Living here is basically not hard except for labor. Isn't it good enough to give you a place to live for free without charging money? Even most people who have magic crystals and goods have directly lived a rich life. Such a living environment is good enough, and the gains and losses after the last siege made them understand that this is a real pure land and cannot be lost. All those who originally had other ideas gave up their own little calculations and started to live honestly. Although some people would make trouble at ordinary times, it would not matter as long as they did not go too far. Even now, watching the true God army in the rear being beaten to pieces, these people felt that it was normal. Some people even moved stools and leaned against the edge of the city wall to watch this scene. "Hey, how do you think they will lose this time?" someone suddenly asked with interest. The person being asked hesitated for a moment, then curled his lips and said with a bored look, "Same old, I'm used to seeing it. Nothing more than screaming and retreating, or the whole army will be wiped out. There is nothing to say, so no one is too lazy to watch," and some people even yawned. Boom! 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 Suddenly, there was a vibration, as if some giant beast suddenly appeared in front of them, and everyone's ears stood up, listening carefully to where the sound and movement came from, and even showed joy on their faces. Finally, someone incredible came up to die. "I have been watching the show for a long time. Whether it is the kingdom or the demon god, the attacks have never stopped, but the result is that the whole army is annihilated without exception. Now a tough guy is suddenly going to appear. How can it not be exciting?" Everyone rubbed their hands in anticipation. But when the fortress-like thing in the distance appeared in front of them, everyone's face turned pale. At this moment, they finally remembered the fear of being dominated by the giant fortress. The huge figure in the distance kept approaching, and the rumbling steam engine and magic shield on its body were firing at full power. The powerful pressure rushed in, and the weak people even rolled their eyes and fainted. Chapter 257 Fortress War. In ancient times, there was a god of war legion. It is said that they had a true god armor inherited from an even more ancient time. However, after the current analysis of this true god armor, the final result is magic technology. In other words, the alchemists had already created a mobile war fortress, and had turned it into a war machine that could be put into actual combat a long time ago. However, as to why this research suddenly only had one war fortress left, the problem is huge. Someone once heard a story about a swordsmith who could forge the best sword in the world, so there were endless people asking him to forge swords, but in the end, there was only one person who could ask him to forge the best sword. But because the sword was too strong, the person who asked the swordsmith to forge the sword had evil intentions, and he wanted his sword to become unparalleled in the world. So, he killed him. In fact, his sword really became an unparalleled divine sword, and it is still being sung and praised even now. It seems that no one has ever remembered the swordsmith, but the name of the sword can be passed down forever. In this case, the fortress seems to be the same. Lord City Lord. Think of a solution. Think of a solution. Suddenly, someone ran to Xiao Yun in fear, knelt down and hugged his legs, begging him. Xiao Yun raised his eyebrows when he heard this. Is this thing powerful? The mobile war fortress in front of him really looked powerful. If it was placed before, it might really be an invincible weapon, but now. To be honest, it is not unreasonable for the Fire Kingdom to rise now. Technology is always the primary productive force. Although the current equipment level of the Fire Kingdom is not as good as that of others, they can continue to study and transform, and even produce in large quantities. So now, even if the true God is revived, it is not a threat to them. Even the Fire Kingdom, which was originally suppressed by the Four Kingdoms, has the possibility of becoming the first overlord. This made Xiao Yun almost confused, but when he saw the true God Legion being beaten like dogs by his own Black Shadow Legion, he figured it out. A man with a knife could never beat a sharpshooter. Even if he was not a sharpshooter, a Gatling gun would be no match for him. Can you be killed like a sieve? Sometimes, technology is really powerful. Now seeing this mobile war fortress coming towards this side, this old antique that has been around for tens of thousands of years is rumbling and making a sound that seems to be dismantling itself. Xiao Yun's face is full of regret. Fortunately, these people are selfish enough, otherwise I might have died tens of thousands of times in this world. Imagine? Surrounded by 10,000 sniper rifles, even if these sniper rifles are just inferior products, how can you, a mortal body, avoid them? If only a few dozen people of level 100 surrounded him, Xiao Yun would have died without a burial place. Fortunately, this world has not developed to that point. Still let himself take advantage. Surrender and no killing. The true God armor is here. The sound that sounded like a loudspeaker in the mobile war fortress sounded, and it was conveyed to the entire magic tower fortress, and almost everyone heard this sound. Those who had not planned to watch the show all came to the city wall to check what happened. Xiao Yun looked helpless. True God armor, oh my god. Am I crazy? The story my great-grandfather told me, I actually saw the real thing today. Someone knelt unconsciously, holding his head with horror in his eyes. It's like the Qin Shi Huang you complain about every day suddenly resurrected, sent you a text message, and then brought his terracotta warriors to you in front of everyone and said, I, Qin Shi Huang, send money, unify the world, and be the Grand Marshal of the army. Can you believe this? You won't doubt that you are dreaming, right? Anyone would collapse if this happened to them. Not to mention you, an ordinary person. So, more and more people were shaken. The God they firmly believed in suddenly appeared in front of them. Would you rather believe in the true God who had long been famous and feel at ease under that guarantee, or would you rather believe in an unstable factor and wait for death foolishly? The answer is obvious, the one with a higher probability is more likely to survive. Is it possible that 1% is worse than 100%? This is not something that can be explained by 2 zeros. Lord City Lord, think of a solution. Although many people have been shaken, most of them still have a vague intuition in their hearts. The person in front of them can be trusted. They believe in this young man who has brought many miracles. Although they are not well informed, and even Xiao Yun is not too famous, after all, many things are solved internally with the top leaders of the major kingdoms, it is normal that his reputation has not been revealed. However, this does not prevent them from believing in Xiao Yun. Well, you haven't run away yet, which is already giving me face. Xiao Yun sighed, looking at the group of pitiful people beside and behind him, and the people who have left the fortress at the gate of the city wall below, sighed, and took out a giant from the shadow space. That's right, it was taken directly from the shadow space and emerged on the ground. A huge war mecha, with a fine iron skeleton, magic crystal, magic quartz motor drive, and human meridian lines. It is a very standard muscle fortress. It even looks much smaller than the opponent's mobile war fortress. People can't sit inside, but it can allow the shadow to perfectly integrate into it. Even if the fortress is broken, there is no need to worry about the shadow being damaged. Pa. When the fortress appeared, it moved a little, and touched its fists and palms together, making a sound of metal clashing. The behavior that was like a living person made the army of the true God hesitate. Even the god of war Ares inside the mobile war fortress was stunned for a moment. Did he find the wrong person? Although the magic fluctuations emitted by the opponent's thing were not obvious, the concise and capable style did not look like a flower stand at all. Ka! The ground broke, and the Shadow Power Fortress stepped directly on the ground and rushed out a distance in an instant. So fast! Ares didn't even have time to react before he saw the black shadow appear in the air in front of the cockpit, and the other party's hand even pressed on the transparent magic crystal on the cockpit. Boom! A huge force came, and the fortress was directly pushed down by the seemingly forceless impact. The sand and dust continued to fly up, but the Black Shadow Power Fortress did not stop, but quietly dismantled the mobile war fortress. Crunch, crunch! The teeth-grinding sound of metal friction and twisting came out, and many people frowned and dared not turn their heads, for fear of missing this extraordinary spectacle. When Xiao Yun's fortress appeared, many people didn't react, and they all wanted to slip away directly. Who wants to accompany this fool to die? The fortress can't even sit on people, so what's the point of fighting? Risking life? Controlled by the opponent? But now, they don't think so. Chapter 258 Fist to the Flesh. Is this a living thing? The mobile war fortress was torn apart alive. No one can sit inside, so this thing is really alive? Many people cannot understand what is going on right now. Until the armor of the true god was torn into pieces, and the god of war Ares walked out, everyone held their breath. No one dared to breathe, for fear of disturbing the strange atmosphere. Click! Ares picked up the fragments beside him casually, and his face was still in disbelief. What he couldn't understand was why this fortress with a very weak size and breath fluctuations could dismantle his war fortress. After picking it up and throwing it away, Ares's face did not show any emotional fluctuations, but his eyes were slowly tilting towards the fortress opposite. You seem pretty good. Ares finally moved his lips and said this sentence after a long time. Of course, his anger had reached the dividing point. Ares was in another state after entering anger. Ah! After a roar, a pair of giant hands appeared behind Ares, as if he was born with 4 hands, but Xiao Yun knew that these were monsters with special talents born by the so-called true gods and some demons, and these monsters were sealed as gods, each with powerful strength and abilities. However, these so-called true gods also have their own shortcomings, that is, they are far from controlling their emotions or their own abilities. Imagine that it is easy for a human to lift a gun, but the recoil, operation difficulty and accuracy of this gun far exceed the understanding and adaptation range of this human. In this case, this gun seems to be useless except for hitting people, and even if it is accidentally snatched away by someone, this gun will become a stumbling block. This situation happens when many true gods are young, and the out-of-control talents cannot be controlled. Over time, even if they get used to it, some shortcomings will appear, resulting in a significant decline in ability values, or some uncontrollable defects in themselves. Usually the temper is impacted, and then the will is naturally incomplete. This is what Aries is like now. Once anger rises, using their special talents will cause some problems. Now it seems that anger has taken the upper hand. As mentioned earlier, a gun, if it is controlled by someone who cannot use it perfectly, it is a burden, but if it is controlled by a fierce man who can use it skillfully and increase its power, then this person will immediately turn into a terrible beast. Especially now, the bravery brought by this guy's anger is enough to fight any enemy to the end. After all, he is the top high-end combat force in this world. Wow! Aries flashed and punched the chest of the fortress. The chest of the Shadow Power Fortress was instantly dented, and even unconsciously stepped back a few steps. Everyone's heart sank, the anger of the true god. So terrifying. The Shadow Power Fortress seems to be no good. During this period, many people sneaked out of the fortress. Xiao Yun did not stop those who wanted to leave the fortress, but just watched silently. The Shadow Power Fortress took a few steps back and stretched out a hand to hold Aries' wrist tightly. Between the two, Aries was obviously shorter, while the Shadow Power Fortress was several heads taller than the former. Now that his wrist was restrained, Aries had no emotional reaction except for rage, and just roared and punched again. Click! The sound of metal being ravaged and rubbed sounded, which made people feel very harsh and tooth-grinding. The Shadow Power Fortress took a few steps back again. Seeing this retreat, another group of people slipped out of the tower fortress. But the Shadow Power Fortress stretched out another hand to strangle this hand. He forcibly pried his two hands apart, spread them out as if he was going to hug, and then the Shadow Power Fortress moved. In front of the still angry Aries, no matter what the other party did, he could not feel afraid. At this moment, he was only angry. The two giant hands behind him also moved immediately, and hit the Black Shadow Power Fortress like a pile driver. Bang! 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 The loud noise came with the strong wind, and the yellow sand on the battlefield danced wildly, as if it was about to form a tornado. Bang! Another loud noise. It seemed that this was not strange, but the strange thing was that after the loud noise, Aries' fist stopped. Looking closely, it turned out that the power fortress hit it fiercely with its head. Because his hands and feet were controlled, Aries could not dodge and was directly hit by this headbutt. The first time his head was hit brought a short cooling period for his anger, that is, in that short time, the counterattack of the Black Shadow Fortress began. Punch after punch, it hit back in the same way as the opponent hit, and even in the end, it held down Aries' head and pressed it hard on the yellow sand, and the other fist smashed up like a life-threatening blow. The yellow sand was stained with blood. The hand-to-hand combat between the two brought not only passion, but also fear and despair. What way can mortals survive in front of these so-called true gods? Xiao Yun smiled. Recently, the city is short of coolies, and these escapees will have work to do. The city's rules were all read before they came, and those people also swore to abide by them. But now that the disaster is imminent, they all fled. How could it be so easy? Want to leave after enjoying it? How good is that? Seeing Aries being beaten and gradually motionless, as if he woke up, all the people who escaped from the city broke out in cold sweats. Their current situation is more embarrassing. If they don't go back, it means they will be displaced, and they can only be slaves or even refugees in other cities. But if they go back, they will be similar to refugees, but they can barely survive with a job. Going back seems to be the best outcome. But they are familiar with the city regulations and understand that this place will definitely be attacked by more true gods in the future, and it will be defeated one day. If that happens, will they flee again or stay? Just like when they came, take whatever you bring. The tower will not keep anything from you. If you want to leave, leave. But if you want to come in, you have to weigh the cost of multiple escapes. The resources provided by the tower are almost equivalent to giving them away for free, feeding them. They come empty-handed and leave after eating for nothing. There is no such thing as a free lunch in the world. For a moment, many people stood there at a loss, they didn't know what to do. Go back and endure the suffering? Or believe in Xiao Yun, the merciful Lord? To be honest, these people have never believed in Xiao Yun, they believe in themselves. But the current situation does not allow them to disbelieve. Chapter 259 The Prophet arrives. There is no way, go back. These people know their fate. There is no other way but to accept their fate. At most, they hope that this fortress is really as indestructible as Xiao Yun said. Time passed little by little. Ah! No! Damn monster! Let me go! Do you know what you are doing? Trampling on the dignity of the true God, you will be punished most severely by the gods. Ares' screams began to resound throughout the Gada desert. Even the defeated god of war army sighed. Even their boss was solved, what was he? I guess he was not even cannon fodder. Because of Ares' failure, the god of war army was defeated and even Ares was captured and became a prisoner. However, what Xiao Yun cared about was not the so-called punishment from the gods in Ares' mouth, but the current demons. It has been a week since the Black Shadow turned into a great prophet and went to the demon lord's vein. During this period, he has been passing various information to Xiao Yun, which also allowed Xiao Yun to understand the true background and detailed information of each demon family. For example, now, the shadow-turned great prophet is in a cave in the Lord's land. This cave is the residence of the goblins. Although it can be seen that it has been cleaned up, it can also be seen that it is very dirty and messy. But it is also true that it is amazing enough to make these goblins want to clean up. What else can be said? Lord Prophet! The water you want is here. The goblins trembled and brought a complete bottle. They didn't even dare to take it with their hands, but the goblin wizard used magic to carry it up. The goblins are not stupid, but very smart and cunning. They also know the importance of things like profits to them. The appearance of the goblin warrior has brought more changes to all this. For example, the greedy goblins will calm down and think quietly and limit their desires. Suppress greed first and release it in the right place. This is the current goblin. Now, the appearance of the great prophet has allowed the goblins to see a possibility of trading. From the perspective of the goblin warrior, the great prophet's status is obviously higher than theirs. He is an existence that can kill or give life to them at will. It is not their turn to speak first. Therefore, the goblins who saw the great prophet coming at the beginning welcomed him warmly. They listened to the great prophet's orders at the first time, and they tried their best to solve this problem. Now it is like this. The goblin warrior thought about it, and then presented the current situation with a different mindset. A bottle was handed over and wrapped in magic and sent to the prophet. Thank you, lovely demon people. The great prophet said very kindly, then took the water bottle, opened the lid and drank the water in it. Seeing him drink the water, the goblin warrior finally breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "You rest first. Although the place is a little hee-hee, I won't bother you." After that, the goblin warrior left here with a group of confused goblins. The goblin warrior knew that this was not the time to make demands or anything. After his judgment, the person in front of him was indeed the great prophet. That kind of purest dark power is the original and beyond the reach of everyone. After being convinced of this, the goblin warrior needs to make some arrangements. Although the place was a little worse, he had already started to ask people to build it. But not long after they left, the great prophet also walked out slowly and walked towards the place he sensed. That is, he walked towards the place where the goblins were busy building their homes. The goblin warrior didn't know. If he knew, he would definitely follow with a smile. Just when the great prophet arrived at the site where the great prophet's residence was being built, all the goblins looked over as if they had sensed something. When they saw the great prophet coming, all the goblins were stunned. Why did the great prophet come here? The great prophet? Oh my god! I actually saw the great prophet. Don't talk. Kneel down quickly, don't you want to live? Maybe, I will be lucky enough to see the brave master in this life. The goblins whispered, but the great prophet slowly walked forward and came to a trembling goblin. The goblin hadn't recovered yet, and only recovered when he found the great prophet in front of him. He looked up at the great prophet with a look of horror, his eyes full of confusion and fear. Just as the goblin warrior understood, the great prophet was someone who could decide their life and death at will. Even if all the goblins present today were killed because the great prophet was in a bad mood or a goblin took a step with his left foot first, no goblin dared to say anything. Even the goblin warrior didn't dare to say no. Get up, people of the demon god. The great prophet bent down and helped him up. The other goblins were a little fascinated by the scene. At this moment, they only felt that the glory of the demon god was shining on them. It has always been believed that goblins are an abandoned race, and goblin warriors are not allowed to enter the demon god's territory after death, even if it is only the periphery of the demon god's territory. Living underground, ugly, hard and difficult, dark and dark. Greed came from this. If possible, they also wanted to live in the forest and possess the sun's radiance, even if it was only 1/10,000th of it. But no, whether it was the demons, humans, or nature, they all hated them. The demons called them the worst demons, and humans regarded them as animals worse than pigs. Now, there was a man who was comparable to a king. He said to himself with a kind glow, "You are not a monster, you are not an animal, you are not ugly, you are just unique, you are still the favorite of the demon god. The great prophet is really good? Thank you, thank you." The goblin knelt down again with tears in his eyes, and kowtowed in front of the great prophet to thank him. Perhaps it was the intimacy brought by the darkness that made these goblins feel intimacy involuntarily, and even just an ordinary word could make them think of a lot. Not to mention that this goblin was facing the crisis of being killed just now. Let's build it together. How can I let you interfere with my house? We are all children of the demon god, and we are equal. The great prophet said as he began to pick up the inferior stone shovel and began to dig the rock in a serious manner. The goblins were stunned. It was the first time they saw such a kind person up close. They swore that even their parents were not as kind as this guy. This guy is different, completely different. Everyone, we are all children of the demon god. Life seems to be good. The dim cave in front of them also has a little more warmth. Speaking of greed, goblins are actually very easy to satisfy. The great prophet played by the Black Shadow is completely based on the knowledge taught by Xiao Yun's head. In other words, to some extent, it is really a great prophet, even more real than the real one. Chapter 260 Goblin's Sincerity. What? What did you say? On the goblin throne, the goblin warrior who heard the news seemed to be unresponsive, thinking that he heard a joke. These people were not honest at all. They actually joked with him like this? But after seeing the expression on the face of the other party who reported the news, he found that this guy might be serious. What the great prophet said and did. To be honest, from the beginning, the goblin warrior wanted to treat this great prophet as a partner or a trading partner, but the status was not equal. In fact, his idea was not only held by the top leaders of the goblin race, but also by the top leaders of other races. Although the great prophet was noble and powerful, he could not affect the law of their survival for tens of thousands of years, that is, the instructions of the top leaders were the only ones. But now they found that this great prophet may directly replace the law of their survival to a certain extent and meaning. From then on, the tribe might integrate such a person, and this person would be like the light of a beacon. It also illuminates the way forward for everyone. The goblin warrior had this feeling at the moment, very strongly. Let's go. Let's take a look. The goblin warrior suppressed his excitement and trembling, carefully stepped down from the throne, and rushed to the direction of the great prophet. A group of goblin leaders also followed excitedly. The great prophet's actions were tantamount to returning abandoned cats and dogs to their arms, giving them a warm and peaceful home. Although it was spiritual, the soul was enough to make up for many injuries. Until he arrived at the workplace where people were working in full swing, the goblin warrior did not show up at the first time, and those who found him booed. He just wanted to see if this so-called great prophet was really as kind and gentle as they reported. The great prophet was rolling up his sleeves to work with these people. Thank you for your help and hospitality. The great prophet seemed to have no airs. If the goblin warrior had not personally sensed the strong dark power in this guy's body, he might not believe that a person of the great prophet's level and status would actually work hard with the lowly goblins to do such dirty and tiring work. Obviously, this kind of work only needs to wait for others to do it well. The goblin warrior didn't know why, but he felt tears welling up in his eyes. He was not a crybaby, but now he felt a blockage in his heart when he saw this scene, as if something was trying to get out of his heart and vent it. Let's go. The goblin warrior walked out. The short figure and the golden armor on his body were very dazzling at this moment, and they made a friction sound because of walking. Above board, at this moment it was no longer the rat hiding in the ground and the gutter, but the upright and above-board god. No, its glory was more shining than that of the above god. Hero! Look! It's the hero! Some goblins were looking around when they saw the goblin warrior walking slowly. They shouted out immediately, their eyes full of envy and admiration. For the goblins, the appearance of the goblin warrior was almost equivalent to the arrival of His Majesty the King. However, the goblins present didn't know why, but they felt that the goblin warrior was a little different at this moment, a little high and mighty and hard to see through, but this also made him more friendly. Hero! The great prophet turned around and looked at the goblin warrior with a little surprise as if he realized it afterward. The goblin warrior also looked like he hadn't recovered. He didn't know how to talk to the great prophet at this moment. It was like a shy child seeing his own adults. Even if he didn't make any mistakes, he would feel very shy and didn't know how to face the communication. This seemed to be different from the first time he met the great prophet. Hello. The goblin warrior looked shy. Don't worry, child of the demon god. No matter what mistakes you make, the demon god will always forgive you. The great prophet stretched out his palm and covered the top of the goblin warrior's head and patted it gently. Hearing this, the tension in the goblin warrior's heart was instantly resolved. However, new doubts appeared in his heart. Since we are all children of the demon god, why are we abandoned here? The goblin warrior said with some trembling. He almost asked this question subconsciously. Even if he found something wrong after asking it, and even wanted to apologize to the great prophet did not look angry and continued to pat its head gently. The demon god has never abandoned you. Even if he has, please treat this as a test. Now I am here, and everything should be over. The kind tone and the intimacy that was born with the power of darkness instantly shortened the distance. The great prophet seems not so unattainable. The legendary existence in the memory seems to be pretty good. I should never ignore him. I am just a beast. The goblin warrior sighed in his heart. Okay, I have to continue building my residence, so I won't chat with you for now. The great prophet smiled and turned to walk towards a group of goblins, and began to pick up a hoe to continue digging the cave wall. Me too, I'll come too. The goblin warrior was filled with emotion, and his actions and words were almost subconsciously from his heart, and his body moved along with it. He walked forward and took the shovel on the ground in his hand. Not long after the goblin warrior walked forward, he saw that the guys behind him who followed him were standing there stupidly with tears in their eyes, and he couldn't help shouting out, "What are you doing? Come on, join us!" The guys who were in a daze were all called up, and then they walked forward to pick up shovels and hoes and join the working goblins. Just when the project was in full swing, the so-called wrath of the gods on the side of the magic tower fortress also came. In front of the Gada desert behind the magic tower fortress, a group of various gods gathered here and united. Originally, they could not find a chance to cooperate and attack the magic tower. Yes, because the control of the magic tower is a problem. If it is not distributed properly, it will easily cause disputes, so many gods do not want to mediate the matter at the first time. But now it is different. The god of war Ares has been captured. They have a pretext for going out and an opportunity to perfectly divide the fortress. To be honest, even if Xiao Yun wants to cooperate, they will definitely not agree to cooperate. The eyes of these gods are on the top of their heads. It is simply impossible to get them to bow their heads and cooperate. In addition, they have long believed in their fists, so the only way to solve the problem is fists. Chapter 261 Ares' Social Death. Now, the coalition of gods appeared again. Xiao Yun did not pay too much attention to them, but summoned most of the shadow power fortresses. These fortresses took action immediately without waiting for the high gods to read out their so-called judgment decrees. The army of gods suffered heavy casualties for a while. These guys who followed their gods to ascend to the gods suffered a terrible blow at the first time. Many gods were about to curse despicable when they were silenced by a new round of attacks. The shadow power fortresses rushed into the enemy's position like wild beasts that had been freed from their shackles, not worrying at all that the enemy would surround them, because shadow power fortresses kept coming out from the ground and then rushing into the array of the god army. And countless shadows in the back started a large-scale attack with various magic technologies. To be honest, these forces are enough to flatten any place or even capture it. But Xiao Yun didn't do that, and he wouldn't do that in a short time. The teleportation array of another world, the other side of the world center, is still unknown. If all the resistance forces of this world are solved, then the enemy's people who attack here can only turn this place from a no-man's land into a slave land. Moreover, sealing and opening the secrets of the world center requires a large amount of power to carry out, and the consumption is not scary. It would be much easier if Xiao Yun was left to do this alone, but there are so many obstacles now, and the fruit of the tree he just planted might be picked by someone else. Xiao Yun has not yet considered this kind of thing of doing wedding clothes for others. So he is thinking of an effective solution, and the Great Prophet happens to be the test version of this method. Now, life in the entire Magic Tower Fortress is the same as usual. Even if the god army attacks, the residents in the city still do their own thing, but if there are familiar and careful people, they will definitely find that these so-called self-willed people still have a trace of solemnity and worry in their eyes, and even do things a little absent-mindedly. But at least it is much better than the previous behavior that was directly revealed and greatly affected their lives. At this moment, the battle outside the Magic Tower Fortress is still going on. It is expected that Xiao Yun should be defeated and weak after the battle with the god of war army, and even have a feeling of being strong on the outside but weak on the inside, so now these god coalition forces are almost gathering together to pick the fruit of Ares. It's not that they are too confident, but they believe in the ability of Ares, the god of war. After all, they were once enemies, so they naturally understand how terrible Ares' fighting power is. And Xiao Yun was able to capture him alive and even defeated Ares' army. This is terrifying enough. They don't believe that Xiao Yun has other means to deal with them. So their joint action is just a reliance on dividing the big pie. More likely, they would better come as a leader and want to capture this fortress with just a few people. After all, they are just remnants of soldiers and generals. They just take over here directly, and the superficial ceremony must be done. But in fact, the army they brought today just saved their lives. If it weren't for the army they brought, they might have become corpses or been captured like Ares. In fact, Ares is already a shame in their current circle. This guy was captured alive by a human like a beast, which is more exciting and direct than any humiliation. If they were captured alive, they would not be able to live in this world. It is no exaggeration to say that Ares has died socially. Of course, their concepts and ideas may need to change slightly now. What the hell? What on earth is this? What kind of creatures are these guys? Are they all monsters? Ares can actually survive the attack of such a terrible monster gulp. I think we all made a very stupid mistake, underestimated our enemies, and underestimated Ares. Arrogance is always one of the sins, no one can escape. Atone your sins, brothers and sisters. The gods were beaten and fled with their heads in their hands. Although their movements were not very elegant and not very unified, their expressions were extremely similar and their steps were in sync. Looking at the young man on the wall who was yawning and resting his chin, their hearts and eyes were full of despair. As gods, they knew the horror of the battle results better than anyone else, and they also knew the fate of the losers, so they paid special attention to this. Therefore, they were disheartened. I don't know when the border of the Gada desert behind them has been surrounded by various black shadows. The magic technology in their hands is emitting terrible fluctuations and dazzling light. If they pull the trigger carelessly, magic will erupt. The god army dare not approach, nor dare to disperse rashly. There are shadows of the Black Shadow army in all directions. They are like hunting wild beasts and have surrounded themselves and others, and at this moment they are frantically shrinking the encirclement. What's more fatal is that most of the Black Shadow power fortresses have been rushed into the interior of their army. These power fortresses more than 3 people high are like wild beasts out of the cage, rushing wildly, and no one can stop their charge. There are wolves in front and tigers behind, they are like pigs. A group of pigs surrounded by tigers. They stupidly rushed in to read out some judgment declaration. At this moment, they only hated those 2 guys, one named Light and the other named Ice and Snow. They finally understood why the 2 goddesses were full of pity and ridicule in their eyes, and were even willing to give up the opportunity to divide the control of the fortress. They didn't understand it at first, but now they understand it. Unfortunately, what's the point of regretting if understanding is useful? The legion was destroyed, and the gods were all captured alive. At this moment, they felt not only humiliation, but also helplessness and fear. Ares is not stupid, but the stupid ones are the self-righteous gods. Even ants can kill elephants. It is said that even if an elephant dies, it is still an elephant, but is it really so? Is the ending determined from the beginning? Obviously not, there will never be only one ending and result. The army of gods was defeated, and the whole country was shocked. A small fortress first blocked the ancient demon god, and then captured all the gods. Is there a real god living here? Unfortunately, no one knows the result now, and no one will know it in the future. A few days later, the great prophet's room was completed. It was a very quiet little cave house. After the cooperation of the great prophet and the goblins, this hut almost became the most beautiful and luxurious house in the entire goblin underground cave city, at least in the goblin tribe. Chapter 262 The Lich King with Bad Intentions. Although the goblins were poor, they almost gave away their most precious wealth. A small flower, a small grass, and even a handful of soil on the ground, this is the goblin. In fact, it doesn't seem so bad when the goblin calms down. I heard that you like human gadgets very much. The great prophet suddenly remembered something and took out some exquisite human gadgets from the black shadow space he carried with him. These were things that he had intended to trade with the monster tribe from the beginning, and even to buy people's hearts when necessary. Although these human gadgets may not be worth much in the human world, and few people even care about these gadgets, it is different in the demon world. Monsters have a very fanatical pursuit of such exquisite and beautiful things. This is the goblin warrior's mouth was also very big, staring blankly at the exquisite little things in the hands of the great prophet with longing and greed in his eyes. Similarly, the eyes of other little goblins also flashed with emotions called envy and jealousy. But strangely, they did not show any signs of running away at this moment. In fact, even when the goblins are furious, they still retain a touch of cunning, which is why many adventurers and villages are easily defeated. Imagine that a wild beast that you thought was crazy suddenly made a little wise move, which put you in a desperate situation. You could only see the scene before you died. Would you feel fear at that time? Unfortunately, it was too late. Now, the great prophet who turned into a black shadow has keenly discovered this. Although the goblin race is nominally the lowest, in fact, their existence is no weaker than some high-level monsters. It's just that these goblins have been forgotten, otherwise they will definitely show all the conditions required by high-level monsters. Come on, children of the demon god. The great prophet's thoughts only passed for a moment, and then he looked at the goblins around him with a kind smile. The goblin warrior swallowed his saliva and clenched his fists, but in the end he didn't muster up the courage to go forward. It's not that he didn't want to, but because he was a brave man, destined to carry the banner of the goblin on his shoulders. He knew his responsibilities, and sometimes he had to give up something after all. Come on, don't be afraid, it's just a little. The great prophet cast his eyes over, looked at the goblin warrior, and also stretched out his hand to it. Gulp! The goblin warrior swallowed his saliva again. At this moment, the great prophet still had a delicate grass fabric woven by humans in his hand, which looked like a mantis. If you ask if it wants it, it will say, yes, especially, really especially. But he didn't dare, and didn't dare to think about it. The only grasshopper left in the great prophet's hand was for himself, and there was no doubt about it. But it was worried that it would not be able to control its greedy desires because of this. You have done very well. There is no need to suppress yourself. Appropriate release can also be beneficial. Blind suppression will always rebound, right? The great prophet stepped forward, took the goblin warrior's hand, pried open his fingers one by one, and put the grasshopper in his hand. Patted its head gently again. Child of the demon god, greed is normal. When dealing with enemies, you must be greedy for their lives. When dealing with wealth, you must be aware of greed to the end. There must be a limit to suppression, don't be too harsh. The words of the great prophet hit the heart directly. To be honest, the goblin warrior has already felt a little relaxed and obedient in his heart. Now the words of the great prophet are just giving him a step down. There is no harm in going down the slope. The goblins present have all got what they admire most. They don't show how happy they are on their faces, but the gradually red eyes have revealed their current state. Happy as a child. So happy that their hands are shaking. If it weren't for the title of the high-level goblin position on their shoulders, they might have been lying on the ground like those ordinary goblins and began to carefully use their imagination, playing and fighting like children, and even saying ridiculous things. Sometimes, they also envy ordinary goblins, even ordinary goblins envy them. If you lose something, you will always get some compensation. If you want to ask if you regret it or not, I can't say. I can only say that you still have to do it even if it hurts. Even if you wail half to death, your body still has to be honest to complete these disgusting or even unpleasant things. This is called responsibility. Boom! After a loud noise, the entire Goblin Lord's dungeon shook. And the scouts of the Goblin Dungeon also came here to report the news as soon as possible. My lord, the brave. The old guy Lich King brought a group of undeads and came with a fierce momentum. He attacked with magic at the door. The scout reported, his eyes full of panic, and his body was shaking constantly. The goblin warrior slowly came back to his senses from his trance, and the various complex emotions in his eyes were restrained a little. He put his hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist, looked at the grasshopper in his other hand, and a rare smile appeared on his face, and there were childish words, "Is the grasshopper a sharp blade? It sounds sharp, and it looks like I'll have to wait a while before I can play with you. Now, let me go out and take a look." Click! The sound of armor rubbing against each other rang out, and the goblin warrior resolutely walked out. The goblins behind him also looked at the grasshoppers in their hands thoughtfully, then gathered their minds and walked outside. All this was seen by the great prophet behind him. He must know what the Lich King's arrival means now. It's nothing more than because this guy felt a sense of crisis and believed that the appearance of the great prophet would lead to the reorganization of the loose forces of the demons. And the secret that the Lich King had threatened the demons to unite before seemed to be solved naturally because of the arrival of the great prophet. The Lich King was anxious. Forget it, let's go out and take a look. The great prophet didn't want the place he had finally settled to be wiped out by the Lich King. The faces of many demons at the beginning made the great prophet feel dangerous. Cooperating with them was really tantamount to seeking the skin of a tiger. Only the humble goblins made him see the possibility of cooperation. Therefore, the great prophet would stop here and even start to lay out his plans here. But I didn't expect the Lich King to come so quickly. It seems that the appearance of the great prophet really has a huge impact on it. Of course, this also solved a problem and a huge doubt for Xiao Yun in disguise. The problem of the demons uniting is a big trouble, and it is not a good thing for such a united demon to be controlled by the Lich King, a guy with a strong hostility. Chapter 263 One-sided. Another doubt is, what secrets of the demons did the Lich King control that made so many demons obey his orders? It is estimated that this is related to the reason for its defeat last time. Xiao Yun doesn't know why, but he believes that this doubt will be solved soon. In front of the entrance of the Goblin City, the Lich King and a group of demon bone undead gathered in the distance of the surface with many pits. When they saw the appearance of the Goblin warrior, a smile appeared on their faces. Isn't this the hero? The voice of the Lich King sounded. If this was said at ordinary times, or before the great prophet came, the goblin hero might have smiled and didn't care why this guy suddenly attacked the dungeon, and he might even go forward with a smile to please him. But the difference now is that the short goblin hero exudes the same sharpness and murderous aura, and the Lich King even vaguely discovered that this guy has a little bit of the aura of the Demon King, which is the so-called arrogance. Has this guy finally reached the level of the Demon King? How many years has it been since the Demon King goblin appeared? What has this guy experienced? Could it be? Is it because of that guy? The Lich King was alert. A Demon King can make it a little afraid, and maybe it has to be a little careful when speaking, but its dignity as a Lich King is not covered, but if there are many Demon Kings together, it will not have much confidence. It has to maintain its face, but in fact, many terms cannot be controlled. In other words, the Demon King is the one who really makes the rules, and now the Lich King is a participant with a say, but he controls more information and means, otherwise the demons really don't have the right to speak. But now this situation seems to be changing. Because the great prophet of the demons has arrived. The man who once led the demons to glory in the most ancient times has finally appeared again. The great prophet. In terms of seniority, the Lich King is probably not as good as his great-grandson who is tens of thousands times older. Even the best demon kings now are only the collateral bloodline of the great prophet. You can imagine how terrifying the great prophet is? Not only is he knowledgeable, the existence of the great prophet itself is terrifying. It is said that he is a guide from the darkest area, and every time he returns, he leads the way for the demons. In short, whether it is true or not, the return of the great prophet has become the biggest stone on the head of the Lich King. Why don't you speak? The Lich King is asking you a question. Despicable goblin warrior. A demon king directly released his dragon power as a demon king, trying to make the goblin piss and pee, give it a warning, and let it know the difference in strength. But when the pressure passed, the cowardly goblin did not cry and scream and kneel on the ground, but the contempt and arrogance on his face became even worse. So much so that even other demon kings felt that this guy had the breath of a demon king. Although it was not very obvious, it was constantly improving itself. As long as it reached a certain level, this guy would definitely become a demon king who could be accepted by the demon valley. What a joke! A lowly goblin also wants to become a demon king and live in the valley? You are dreaming. Fortunately, it is discovered now, otherwise you will definitely dirty the glory of the valley. Die. Someone found something wrong and immediately tried to get rid of the goblin warrior. This is a former bull demon. Their power exceeds that of any other demons, even tigers cannot compare with them. With the bull demon's strong defense, they have almost become the upper demons among many demons, and they are extremely powerful. In fact, they don't care much about whether the goblin demon king is a demon king or not. The appearance of a goblin demon king really has little impact on them. But for the current younger demon kings, this is an unforgivable act. Becoming a demon king means that there will be an extra territory in the Demon King Valley, and this territory will distribute the resources of the demons. In other words, a lot of the income of the Lord's land vein will be divided into a part of the goblin race. This is barely acceptable. The output of the Lord's land vein over the years has made them rich. Although the mosquito legs are small, they are also meat, but they will get tired of eating enough meat, so this is nothing. But the demon god realm is different. That is where the ancestors slept. Living in the Demon King Valley means that there will be an extra place in the demon god realm for the goblins to become gods. In the past, the least favored goblins can own a territory where the demon god sleeps. Isn't this a slap in the face of their ancestors? The reason why goblins became a lower level race is that their combat power is not too strong, and their brains are not too good. Although they have a little advantage in numbers, their basic values are equal. Very balanced, but just balanced. Even if they keep learning, it is useless. They can only be cannon fodder. Recently, a brave man appeared, which made many demon kings look at him with new eyes. The brave man is very powerful. He led the goblin race to charge and fight in various battles. He also killed a piece of land in the Lord's vein. In addition, they captured several humans and learned a lot of knowledge from humans. Forging, tactics and a series of other things made the goblins gradually become very strong, but they were only very strong. They were still ants to the top forces. But now, this ant is about to be on equal footing with him. Even his ancestors once swore in public that these despicable and useless goblins would only be cannon fodder for their whole lives, but they would be on equal footing with him. This is not a slap in the face, but what? Boom! A large area of the ground collapsed, and even cracks were spreading outward. The goblin warrior blocked the fist of the skeleton undead bull demon with just one hand holding the sword. How can the bull demon fell apart before he could even say the word can? The bull demon's bones are very tough. Not to mention such a small vibration, even a tsunami may not cause any damage to its bones. But now, no one knows what kind of moves the goblin warrior used, but he actually smashed the bull demon directly. You guy! Have the strength comparable to the Demon King? Why? Why didn't we find it? The bull demon's skull was still talking, but unfortunately there was nothing in its eye sockets, otherwise its eyeballs should be congested and bloodshot at this moment, extremely red. A goblin warrior who is far superior to them in the level of the Demon King. Hiding for so long, but only discovered now. This kid is quite patient. With such a powerful strength, what exactly does it want to do? I think I should put down some things so that I can pick up new things. The great prophet is right. The goblin warrior fixed his eyes and looked at the Lich King in the distance. At this moment, his eyes were like a sharp sword piercing straight into the heart of the Lich King. In an instant, the Lich King felt that his heartbeat slowed down by half a beat. Chapter 264 The Price of Freedom. Is the so-called great prophet really that powerful? A mere goblin was trained to be like this by him? Of course, what the Lich King thought in his heart was only a small part correct. In fact, most of the reason was because of the goblin warrior's own powerful strength. If it were not for its own strength, no other external forces would be able to achieve the current effect. At least the great prophet himself didn't know. He just mentioned a few words according to what the great prophet would say. It is estimated that even the goblin warrior himself did not expect that the goblin, which he once thought was very weak, could scare the Lich King, who was high above him, with just a look. The other demon kings were also shocked by this peerless demeanor. For a while, they looked at each other, as if they were thinking about what to do next. To be honest, they are more afraid of death after becoming undead. Especially the bull demon just now there is only one head left pierced by the sword of the goblin warrior. They don't want to foolishly go over and become a lesson for the past. Moreover, now it is not a lesson for the past. If you are not careful, it will become a mistake for the future. For a while, all the demon kings and undeads either stood still or simply started to circle along a circle, with the goblin warrior at the center. But they knew better than anyone that it was impossible to take action. This guy is so strong. They really didn't expect that there would be such a strong hero among the goblins. Is this still a goblin? Did they bully and kill the goblins they threw on the roadside as garbage? Another point is that although goblins are ugly, they can barely be used as food for the demons. A small number of useless goblins will be taken out as food for other demons. This situation has lasted for tens of thousands of years. But now they find that it seems that the goblins are about to turn over, overturning the monsters that stepped on them, and then stand up and rush up to eat their flesh and chew their bones. And these demon kings are feeling like they are being stabbed. Compared with this, the green ghost fire in the eyes of the Lich King is burning, this time not only burning on the head, but burning its entire body. It can be seen how angry it is now. It is not the first or second time that it is not strict with its subordinates. Although these undead are not its true subordinates, there is only a little ordinary cooperation contract between the two, which is equivalent to a partner. But the Lich King always treats these resurrected undead demon kings as his subordinates. As a result, now, after various things broke out, it found that these demon kings who usually respected it suddenly changed their faces, not only resisting, but also ignoring and disobeying its orders. This is an unforgivable shame for a ruler and a superior. It is as unacceptable as if they all raised their palms and walked in front of it and slapped it in the face one by one, and it was in public. It can't stand this kind of shame. Since you don't want to obey my orders, then all of you will become puppets. The Lich King muttered in a low voice, and then walked in front of a demon king's undead spirit, and gently covered the demon king's huge bones with his hand. The green flames began to spread slowly, and spread to the whole body of the demon king along the place where the Lich King touched it. The demon Lich King seemed to have noticed nothing, and watched the Lich King do whatever he wanted to him without saying anything. It was like being stripped of his like a puppet with its wool taken away. Hey? What are you doing? Suddenly a demon king discovered this scene and screamed. The fire of the dead can burn the soul and even corrode the soul. This is common sense, and now it knows what it is after seeing this scene, it just asked subconsciously. And its words almost attracted the attention of other demon kings. They were originally deadlocked in the confrontation with the goblin warrior, but now because of this voice, they had to turn their heads and look over. When seeing the fire of the dead completely covering a dragon demon king's skeleton, the demon kings present had a crazy possibility in their hearts that they dared not think of at ordinary times. This guy is going to turn them into puppets directly at the risk of the world's disapproval. To be honest, as long as it is a living thing, it will die, but the time of death will be slightly different. Just like the demon kings, the reason why they choose to become undead instead of demon gods is because they want to survive in this world in a different way, rather than becoming demon gods and sleeping in the demon god realm, and then being dug out to defend against enemies when needed. Freedom. Living freedom. That is a beautiful thing that cannot be compared with anything else. Originally, they did not feel that this thing was so important when they were alive. But when they felt that their lives were passing away at the end of their lives and they were about to disappear, they became anxious. In the history of the demon clan, except for those who can really be recorded for a lifetime, all other demon kings and demon gods have been forgotten. Occasionally, there are a few demon gods and demon kings who will be mentioned, but they are very few, and not many people remember them. The saddest thing is not that no one remembers, but that they are about to die, and die quietly. These descendants, after the death of the demon king, are eager to hold a celebration banquet and revel in their ability to ascend the throne of the demon king. Who cares where this old guy who occupied his throne dies? The demons are so ruthless and righteous. And because of this, there are always a lot of madness before death. Therefore, the appearance of the Lich King solved this phenomenon, allowing these demon kings who were about to fall into death to avoid becoming demon gods who only knew how to sleep. Freedom. Return to freedom. Even demon gods cannot escape this bondage, but the Lich King did it. So many demon gods have become undead under the Lich King. Only some demon gods did not become undead because of their own conditions and future possibilities. Now, the Lich King wants to turn them into puppets. I believe that many demon kings will definitely not agree after knowing this. It is even possible that the demons will unite with them to fight against the Lich King. However, now these undead may be solved by the Lich King. Unfortunately, there is no way to enjoy the final peace and freedom. The undead demon kings all closed their eyes. They knew that at this moment, they had no other options except to be furious. Rather than being embarrassed, they might as well recognize all this and accept it. When the flames wrapped their bodies and burned them, the piercing pain filled their hearts, and their souls were disappearing silently. Chapter 265 The Power of Goblin. Crack! The goblin took his sword from the minotaur skull on the ground and went to the demon king closest to him. The demon king had already accepted his fate. Perhaps it would be better to be killed, rather than become the Lich King and domineering and endanger his descendants. The goblin warrior did not wait any longer. He flashed and rushed directly to the demon king in the distance, wielding a giant sword that was several centimeters longer than his body, but it was very fierce. He directly cut the undead demon king into pieces. The opponent's defenseless soul was instantly disintegrated. If it were normal, this demon king might not have died so quickly. After all, the soul can move to every corner of the dead bones, and even if there is only a little bit of bone powder left, it can accommodate the soul. Therefore, as long as the soul exists, the dead can consume magic elements to replenish their bodies. It is almost equivalent to immortality, because the conditions for killing them are almost too harsh. But now, just abandoning the soul here and waiting to be pierced by the sword is almost waiting to die. No one is surprised that a demon king was killed, because everything seems normal. Even some other goblin warriors began to attack. For a time, most of the mighty demon king army were directly killed. The Lich King did not seem to worry about the heavy casualties of the demon kings. It even didn't care if those demon kings did not obey orders and waited to die. The fire of the undead continued to cover the demon king bones that could be controlled. The demon kings finally showed their courage and waited for death. They could not resist the control of the Lich King. Of course, they had a choice now. Making their own choice was just like when they first became undead. Like this, make a choice and take that step. Waiting to die is very difficult, but there is also a feeling of being liberated. As the sword pierced into their souls, the demon kings finally saw another possibility, which was to let go. After all the undead died, their hand bones loosened their tightly clenched fists, and their open palms were more relaxed than ever before. At this moment, they returned to the embrace of the world, disappeared little by little, and the only belief left was relaxation. You deserve to die. The goblin warrior shouted, and the sword in his hand stabbed the non-existent heart of the Lich King without any hesitation. The might made the Lich King feel a tightness in his heart, but then those lich skeletons with blazing flames all opened their eyes, or in other words, there were at least one and at most two green flames in their skull eye sockets, looking at the goblin warrior like eyes. Then he waved his palm, and the huge bull demon's hoof could flatten a mountain, and the giant dragon undead opened its mouth and spit out the breath of the undead, and the area within 1,000 miles withered and was filled with dead air. From small soil and gravel to large birds and beasts and mountain trees, they all turned into withered and rotten mud. No, that was not mud, it was undead rotten mud. For a moment, a trace of solemnity and unwillingness appeared in the eyes of the goblin warrior, and he held the giant sword tightly in his hand, as if he was worried about something. Don't worry, this battle today will make you realize how stupid your actions are. You will remember the miserable faces of the goblins you killed for the rest of your life. It will echo in your mind day and night, and you will be a scourge to the goblin tribe. The Lich King seemed to have seen through its thoughts, so he quickly mocked it. The Lich King has strong confidence in his dragon's breath of the dead. He believes that the dragon's breath can turn all the goblins here, and even other monsters in this area, into undead. Under this kind of corrosion, he doesn't have to worry even if he faces a large number of demon attacks. The demon kings can only come to win and return in defeat. The land of the dead is not in vain. Of course, the goblin warrior also has this idea, because he is in the core attack area of the undead breath at this moment, so he knows more clearly what the other goblins will end up facing this intensity of the undead breath. The final result will really be as it said, all the goblins in the Lord's vein will be exterminated. Even those who survived will eventually disappear in the long river of history. You can't, you shouldn't. The goblin warrior felt that the most important thing in his heart was crushed in an instant. His eyes gradually turned red. The hands that were originally trembling holding the giant sword became particularly firm at this moment. In this case, let it be buried with him. At worst, we can all rest here together. The giant sword gleamed with brilliance, and the goblin soul, which belonged exclusively to the goblin warrior, began to burn. A shadow of a goblin appeared behind it. The terrifying heroic spirit forged by faith lasts forever, and its power is incomparable to that of ordinary magic and summons. You actually forged this kind of thing. I can't let you go. As the goblin tribe disappears under the long river of history, you will rest here forever. The Lich King commanded the giant dragon to spray the breath of the dead, and did not forget to command other undead to attack. All of a sudden, all the Demon King bones burned by the fire of the undead moved. In front of these huge undead, the overwhelming might, the soul of the goblin hero seemed very weak, but it was particularly firm. Everything is mine. The scarlet eyes of the goblin warrior were filled with greed. Since it walked out of the dungeon, only one sentence echoed in its heart: we are all children of the true demon god. Why should you be superior to me? Why is my greed shameful? The great prophet's answer echoed in his mind, and the goblin warrior was more determined than ever before. Never again, compromise. The giant sword was gently swung, and the undead turned into nothingness. With all the greed, the goblin heroic spirit directly absorbed the souls of the slain demon kings, and even the lich fire was absorbed. The greed of the goblin can already devour a lot of power, even if it can't use it itself, it can be used to strengthen the hero. The mighty sword energy rose up, like a goblin running forward with its limbs and limbs bared. It flew to the demon kings with red eyes and hands and feet, and opened its mouth like a desperate man to devour the power that did not belong to it. Is this the power of greed? The Lich King couldn't help but take a few steps back. The power of the goblins, the power from these greedy and despicable goblins, why is it so strong? Oh, the great prophet. That great prophet. But you can't survive such a strong breath of the dead, right? I have achieved my goal, the Lich King sneered in his heart, and then retreated directly, commanding those lich bones to push up, and he himself retreated away from here. Everything has been achieved, and there is no point in staying. Chapter 266 Heartache. Presumably, even the great prophet will die here, right? Since the biggest problem has been solved, there is really no point in staying. Even before leaving, the huge trouble of the goblin tribe was solved. The current demon kings are enough to give the Lich King a headache. If there are more goblins, won't it make it miserable? Another better point is that there are no witnesses left at the scene, and the only remaining goblin warrior is also seriously injured. When I bring another group of demon kings over, I will be able to solve it sooner or later. It's just that the ambiguous attitude of those demon kings is really crazy. I don't know why they let the Lich King take action, but I just stand by and watch. But it is conceivable that the current Lich King is already powerful to a certain extent. The demon kings are extremely afraid of him, but they can't do anything about him. The goblin warrior stood there stupidly, looking at the goblin leaders who were about to decay behind him. His eyes were full of pain. An extremely sad mood came to his heart. He finally stood up straight, but the effect made him regret it. It was so painful that I didn't know how to describe it. I just felt the pain twitching. I couldn't stand up. Even thinking of the faces of the goblin companions in my head, his eyes were full of tears. Faces came to mind one by one until they were all over, and the last figure appeared. The great prophet, a very kind person. It's all my fault, it's my fault. The goblin warrior trembled and forced himself to grab the hilt of the giant sword in his hand to stand up. He looked in the direction of the demon valley, his eyes full of hatred and determination. Come back, kid, are you going to die? A voice sounded behind him. The goblin warrior burst into tears instantly. If the great prophet were still alive, he would definitely say the same thing. Thinking of this, the goblin warrior could not stop himself from walking towards the direction of the demon valley. Have you grown wings? This voice sounded again, and then he felt that his head was hit by a cane-like thing. The goblin warrior was completely stunned and stood there. The tears in his eyes and a series of complex emotions such as determination and hatred were all knocked away by this stick. He turned his head slowly and raised his hand tremblingly. After seeing the serious old man behind him, the goblin warrior's outstretched hand froze in mid-air. He was not sure that this was the person he was mourning in his heart just now, the kind and great highlight. His appearance was like a lighthouse in the dark night, guiding his way forward, making him no longer afraid, no longer cowardly, and no longer inferior. He also learned from him that goblins are not low-level monsters. Goblins are also children of the demon god. The world became different at that moment, and the sun was not so far away from me. I can get a small flower within my reach. Everything they had before was plundered and did not belong to them. But what about now? These also belong to me. They don't need to rob, because these belong to them. The goblin tribe has completely changed. Starting with the brave. Just be happy, the great prophet smiled bitterly. I may have consumed too much magic power, I need to rest for a while. With a thump, the great prophet fell to the ground after he finished speaking. The goblin brave has not come back to his senses yet. Quick! Carry the great prophet into rest. Although the brave was stunned, he came back to his senses immediately, and hurriedly commanded with tears on his face. Ahem! Not well yet? What happened to her? You go out first. Staying here is not a good idea. It's troublesome. No, tell me what happened to her. In the magic tower fortress, Xiao Yun was anxiously walking back and forth like an ant on a hot pot, his face full of panic. Even though he was a black magician, he couldn't solve the disease. At this moment, Kinja was lying on the bed with a flushed face. Xiao Shu was also anxiously taking care of her with towels and hot water beside the bed. Xiao Yun wanted to help, but from the look of Xiao Shu, he didn't need to help himself. But it always felt weird to leave like this. So Xiao Yun just stood there stupidly regardless of the dissuasion, and ordered the black shadows to be on guard from time to time. Did you hear it? Get out! Get out! After Xiao Shu finished his work, he saw Xiao Yun still standing there, and he was immediately angry. They started fighting, and raised their fists fiercely as if they were going to drive people away. Seeing that she was so determined and even a little angry, Xiao Yun couldn't say anything at the first time, so he could only leave in disgrace without saying a word. And just after he left, the two women in the room looked at each other. How are the preparations going? Xiao Shu was a little nervous. Soon this was Kinja's voice, which seemed a little lacking in confidence, perhaps because of illness. It will be soon, I feel he has discovered something. Xiao Shu was very nervous. Kinja smiled and said, don't worry. The church, wedding dress, priest, and other things are all being built. He will definitely not discover them with his wooden head. The two women smiled at each other, their faces full of satisfaction and expectation. Little did they know that all this was secretly heard by Xiao Yun. Although he didn't want to eavesdrop, the Black Shadow still reported it. However, the Black Shadow seemed to only obey Xiao Yun's orders, so did he want to eavesdrop? When Xiao Yun heard about wedding dresses, churches, and priests, his mouth was already wide open to the point where he could swallow an egg. The two of them really care about this matter. After all, anyone would be a little angry and unwilling to suddenly travel to this world when getting married. Even Xiao Yun had some grudges in his heart, but now this feeling has become less and less with the battles and various things. Fortunately, it was the two of them who fiddled with it, otherwise I would have almost forgotten it. What should I do next? After knowing the truth, should I pretend to be surprised or be scared silly? Seeing that the two of them are full of confidence, they should give me a surprise, or even pretend to be sick to scare him, which means they don't want him to know. In this case, I will pretend to be stupid. Xiao Yun got up and left the door of the room, quietly wandering around in the Tower City, trying to use some things to forget this memory. Maybe I will forget it while I am busy? Maybe it will really become a surprise at that time. It's not wrong to say that the two of them are sick. Heart disease needs heart medicine. Let them do it. On the Lord's land, the Goblin Warrior and the Great Prophet are running around. After a while, the Great Prophet woke up from his rest and hurried to the neighboring territory of the goblins. According to the Great Prophet, he was worried about the safety of other monsters, so it was urgent. Chapter 267. A little jealous. I don't know why, after hearing this, the Goblin Warrior actually felt a little jealous like a child, that is, he felt that the elves were not worthy of the Great Prophet. After all, the first place the Great Prophet went to was the tribe of the elves, but how did the elves respond? They all regarded the Great Prophet as a tool. Although I thought so at the beginning, at least I have some respect for the Great Prophet. Instead of disrespecting the Great Prophet like them. When the Great Prophet advanced to the outskirts of the elf territory, the Goblin Warrior was already prepared, but he was still shocked by the scene, and his heart was full of convulsions. How could this be the beautiful elf tribe? It was simply the 18 levels of hell where the devil Satan and Shura evil ghosts lived. A little bit of the breath of the dead turned this place into hell? Thinking back to the goblins he saw just now, who were unharmed, the Goblin Warrior realized how much advantage he had taken before. Just in the outskirts, the elf tribe had suffered heavy casualties. The elves either turned into skeletons or turned into a pool of rotten meat. What's worse, they were directly washed away by the undead wool hidden in the breath of the dead and turned into undead with rotten meat hanging on their bodies, bones exposed in many places, and walking corpses. Miserable, too miserable. The Goblin Warrior didn't know what would happen if this thing continued, but he already had a rough expectation in his heart. Too terrible, really too terrible. I couldn't believe what I saw, but I saw this scene. Elf tribes were destroyed one after another. The ability displayed by the Great Prophet was even more surprising. The Great Prophet waved his hand to dispel the power of the dead, the fog of the dead, the thoughts of the dead, and a series of other undead powers without wasting any strength. Of course, the goblin warrior who was very close to him could see that beads of sweat were dripping from the Great Prophet's forehead, and even his wrinkled face like bark twitched unconsciously. However, all this was a show for the goblin warrior. It was true that these undead powers made it very troublesome for the Black Shadow to clean up, and it could even be said that it would consume a lot of power and time. But the power of the undead can be used by the Black Shadow, that is, the power of darkness can devour the power below its own level, and the power of the undead naturally belongs to this kind. So, rather than saying that the Great Prophet is showing mercy to the world people, it is better to say that the Great Prophet is acting and building a memorial here. Moreover, the resurrection technique used by the Great Prophet can actually resurrect those dead elves. Even those elves whose souls were destroyed by the breath of the dead seemed to realize something and stared blankly at the old man who resurrected them. Looking at the goblin warrior beside them, many elves already have a rough idea in their hearts. Being able to serve the Great Prophet, let alone a goblin warrior, even the contemporary demon king and demon god would feel very honored. So, there is only one possibility for that person, that is the Great Prophet. Admire the appearance of the Great Prophet and enjoy the glory he brings. Countless elves only felt that they found salvation in an instant. Resurrection technique. A serious resurrection technique. Who else can do it except the Great Prophet? Seeing that the Great Prophet was about to leave, some elves didn't know what to do for a while, but after exchanging glances, they unified their actions and followed the footsteps of the Great Prophet. Because the sudden situation caused their elves to suffer heavy losses, and now they really didn't know what to do, so they looked around, but they only saw the hunched but upright figure slowly pacing in front, and the goblin warrior was waiting carefully beside him. Perhaps, this is how the lighthouse in the dark night came about. Bringing peace in despair and fear, the dark world is like a beast that chooses people to devour, but at this time a lighthouse that can illuminate the road ahead appears. Can you not see it? In this way, more and more elves are resurrected, and more followers are coming. A huge team appeared in front of them. Even some ordinary monsters that were affected subconsciously followed this huge team. Almost all of them walked around the entire Lord's Vein in a day. The Lord's Vein was destroyed once before, and most monsters were already dead and injured. Now it was destroyed again, and their despair can be imagined. Of course, the appearance of the Great Prophet also seemed to have saved them. The team grew larger and larger until they had traveled through all the Lord's land veins. The coverage and spread of the breath of the dead were much greater than they thought. Originally, the Great Prophet did not want to make this matter too serious, but he did not expect that the power of the dead almost covered the entire Lord's land vein, which gave him a great opportunity. At the same time, in the Demon King Valley, the well-informed Demon Kings had completely gathered together. Everyone looked gloomy, and no one spoke first, but everyone's eyes were focused on the person on the first seat. Obviously, only this person could speak up to solve this matter. Even if others wanted to solve it, they would not be qualified enough to speak up. It's too much. The Demon King finally spoke, and the rage on his face could not be suppressed. The other Demon Kings were a little stunned. I don't know if he is talking about the Lich King or the Great Prophet. Don't get me wrong, the Prophet has been running around for our demons, which is a great honor and merit. How could I insult him? The Demon King saw that the atmosphere had dropped again, and he immediately hurried to explain. Indeed, the Great Prophet's appearance at this time was a bit like taking advantage of the fire. After all, although they didn't care about the wealth of the Lord's land veins, the population was the real hard power, and to some extent represented their fists. Now the Great Prophet directly came out to provide disaster relief, and even took the opportunity to recruit soldiers and buy horses, which was somewhat disgusting to the Demon Kings. But no one dared to say no. The current Great Prophet is probably equivalent to the existence of heaven and earth in the Demon Clan. Not to mention asking for some manpower and followers, even if it is the name of the Demon God, no one dares to say no. So, everyone was silent. It seems that if the Great Prophet is allowed to grow like this, there seems to be a tendency for the second Lich King to appear. Report. Just when everyone was silent and didn't know what to say next, suddenly a demon rushed in, pushed open the door, knelt on the ground and lowered his head, as if something important had happened. Speak. The Demon King stared at the person who rushed in with cold eyes. If the news he said was not important, such as a concubine of a demon king giving birth to a child, I believe that these demon kings would tear this guy to pieces on the spot. The great prophet is coming with a lot of demon armies, the demon said tremblingly. Chapter 268 Pure Love Minotaur. The current situation, if not handled properly, it will easily turn into a war. The great prophet's current posture is like coming to the door to attack. Even the guy who reported the news hesitated for a moment. Should he obey the rule of the demon kings or submit to the great prophet? Almost in an instant, he made a decision in his mind. It must be the great prophet. Of course, he had to see the situation. So now he came to report the news, and obviously the gathered demon kings didn't expect that the great prophet actually rushed here directly after solving the Lich King's undead power, even with a large army. What does this old guy want to do? Does he want to start a war? The eyes of the demon kings became very dangerous at the first time. If you don't offend them, you will be greeted with a thunderbolt. So no one is talking now. Here there have been a lot of changes here. A figure slowly stepped into the hall, and no one even reported the information. Damn! What do those guys do for a living? Come on! Explain to me. The demon kings were also stunned. The demon king's personal guards, who usually have noses and eyes like hounds, now seem to be dead and have not noticed anything. Let this old guy in? Is this a betrayal or is this old guy too cruel? My lord demon king, what do you want? Suddenly the personal guard ran in and looked at the great prophet in the hall with a dull face. How did you get in? The demon kings felt a chill on their backs. Can this old guy easily avoid the eyes and ears of the personal guards? If he suddenly came into my bedroom and stabbed me when I was asleep, wouldn't I die without knowing how? Cold sweat instantly swept over the backs of each of them. Don't worry, kid. The great prophet kindly stretched out his hand and covered the head of the demon king's guard. You. What are you going to do? The guard suddenly took a few steps back like a cat with its fur blown up, and a blade flashing with black magic power appeared in his hand, as if he was ready to fight at the slightest disagreement. Indeed, this guy came with bad intentions, and he didn't even know what his purpose was. Now he suddenly made such a weird move, everyone would feel afraid, right? But the strange thing is that the guard was like a fool, watching the great prophet's hand covering his head without any response, except for the previous stress response. Child, the demon god forgives you. The great prophet gently patted his head, and turned around after a blessing. The guard was motionless, as if his soul had been sucked away and his soul was scattered. The great prophet slowly walked towards the demon kings. You. Don't come over here. A group of demon kings were like chickens seeing weasels, and some even screamed directly, like a little girl who was about to be insulted. But which of these demon kings present was not 8 feet tall, strong, and could destroy the world with every move? Until he shrank into the corner, the great prophet's slow footsteps also brought him to the destination slowly. A demon king watched the great prophet reach out to him, and then closed his eyes in horror. From just now, they found that there was no trace of this guy's appearance and existence, as if there was no such person. It was terrible. And now, this guy is going to kill them. They don't even feel any danger. They even have a premonition that they will fall asleep like a child next. Although they look like they are sleeping, they are actually dead. This feeling gradually turned into fear. Under the gaze of the demon kings, the demon king closed his eyes, then shuddered, and then opened his mouth and eyes in horror, standing there in a daze with an expression of dying with his eyes wide open. When the other demon kings saw this scene, the fear in their hearts was beyond words. What on earth is this guy going to do? They haven't lived enough. Why? Why do you want to kill them? I beg for mercy. I will serve you. Please don't kill me. I will serve you too. Great prophet. I am willing to serve you. Great prophet. A group of demon kings said the same thing, and even knelt on the ground impatiently to worship the great prophet who was slowly approaching. After kneeling, the demon kings also glanced at the great prophet with their peripheral vision, and saw the kind smile on his face, knowing that they had succeeded. No need to die. But when the great prophet was still slowly approaching and was discovered by them, the demon kings were completely dumbfounded. After the other demon kings were touched on the head, they were like dementia. Occasionally, there were a few with silly smiles and dullness on their faces, and the others were all in a daze. It was like being brainwashed. How could they calm down? It's over. How can this guy be so strong? I'm dead. I have a child who is about to be born. I promised her that I would definitely visit her after she gave birth. A demon king collapsed on the ground, tears in his eyes. At this moment, all he could think of was a picture in his mind, the person he once loved most walking hand in hand on the plain, the clean and clear smile on her face. She used to be a princess, an elf princess, who fell in love with this terrible demon king. She was very beautiful, like a god. Was he really worthy of her? It's broken, the revolving lantern is out. Am I doomed? The demon king was thinking, and it seemed as if scenes appeared in front of him. Looking at the hand covering his head, he didn't know why, but a flame of hope appeared in his heart. The flame burned from his heart and rushed to the top of his head. Fight! For the child, for her smile. I don't know where the strength came from to support it, so it stretched out its hand to block the hand and even launched an attack. As a bull demon, the terrible power instantly cracked the hall under his feet. Moo! The demon king roared loudly and exerted force on his wrist. No matter who it is. The dignity of the Minotaur cannot be trampled. Its name is pure love. The demon king waved his arm fiercely, and secretly vowed to smash this guy who hindered his beautiful life into a meat paste. Other demon kings were also watching this scene, especially some guys who had not been killed by the head patting were looking at it with expectation and shouting in their hearts, "Come on! Mr. Pure Love Minotaur! Hey!" The great prophet's eyes changed slightly, and a surprised and helpless smile flashed in his eyes. Then he turned his palm, and the hand that was originally held was instantly reversed, and it became Pure Love's hand that was held, and he himself was exerting force in this situation. Crack! In an instant, Pure Love's arm was directly twisted into a weird degree, and the sound of bones and flesh and tendons twisting sounded. After hearing this sound, the great prophet's eyes flashed with anxiety, and then he let go of his hand. Boom! The arm that was twisted to a weird degree hit the ground hard. In an instant, the whole hall was cracked and the surroundings began to shake. Such a punch directly smashed the whole hall. Chapter 269 Terrible Goblin. Run! The hall is going to collapse. A demon king who had been touched on the head shouted, awakening the other demon kings who were either scared or thinking, and then a group of people rushed out of the hall in a hurry. Even the Minotaur named Pure Love came to his senses and quickly fled the hall dragging his arm that had become a curved straw. Boom! The hall collapsed, and the guards hurriedly evacuated after hearing the sound. Fortunately, there were no casualties. A group of demon kings and the great prophet were standing in the empty square in front of the hall. This is the meeting hall where all the demon kings gather, called the Demon King Hall. Now that this place has collapsed, a group of demon kings don't know what to do next. But the great prophet is still continuing to touch the head and kill. Child of the demon god, may the demon god bless you. Child of the demon god, may the demon god bless you. The demon kings who had not been killed by the pat on the head before all looked at each other. What are you standing there for? Run! I don't know which demon king said this, and a group of demon kings immediately ran away without caring about their appearance and dignity. Of course, most of these demon kings who escaped were only demon kings who were not blessed by the pat on the head. Those demon kings who were blessed were all anxious. Don't run! How to explain this? Forget it, it's too troublesome to explain. Now they are sure that the arrival of the great prophet is not to be their enemy. Even the appearance of the great prophet is a good event for the demons. If something goes wrong, the demons may occupy this world. Even the secrets threatened by the Lich King will be controlled by the demon kings themselves, instead of listening to the instructions of a guy who is not even a demon king. Therefore, the demon kings who had been touched on the head stepped forward and controlled the demon kings who were about to escape. Damn it! Are you controlled? Let me go. I will die. I don't want to become a puppet. I don't want to. Woo, brother. Let me go. Please. I will die. Do you really want to watch me die? Let me go. What are you doing? Wife. I was wrong. I will never meet my little lover again. Let me go. I will find a way to save you when I escape. There is always a way to save you. A group of demon kings were controlled unexpectedly, which made those demon kings who wanted to escape more eager to escape. So the demon kings who were not going to escape completely adopted the posture they least wanted to see in their lives and began to run away. Of course, a small number of them escaped, and most of them were left behind. Child of the demon god blesses you. The blessing of the great prophet also became much simpler because of this. After being blessed, a group of demons only felt that their strength had been sublimated a lot. Although they were a little weak, the improvement was obvious. So, when the controlled demons fell into a daze, the demon kings who controlled them also let go. The other demon kings who saw the controlled demon kings in a daze were also shocked when they saw this scene. No. I'll die. You bastard, I'm really going to die. Let me go. Woo, why do you let me suffer this kind of thing? Am I going to die? Goodbye, ladies. Screams and howls continued to sound, but unfortunately no one cared. The Demon King's personal guards also stood far behind for a while. The only thing they knew was that the big guys were making trouble now, and they, the little guys, should not go in, or they would become ground beans in the millstone if they were not careful. As the Demon Kings were controlled one by one, the Demon Kings who controlled them also let go of their hands, looking at the Great Prophet with expectation, waiting for his next order. For many years, the Demon Kings tried to break through their own power level but failed, but today they felt a higher level of power because of the blessing of the Great Prophet. Lord Prophet, are you okay? Someone in the group of Demon Kings noticed that the Great Prophet looked very weak, and immediately came forward to look at him with concern. The Great Prophet smiled kindly, stretched out his hand and gently patted the head of the Demon King who had arrived in front of him. Don't worry, kid, the Demon God not only blesses you, but also blesses me. This very official statement obviously cannot explain the current state of the Great Prophet. So the Demon Kings suppressed the questions they wanted to ask, and began to order the preparations for the Great Prophet's resting place. Each family wanted to compete for the Great Prophet to rest in their own Demon King city. By the way, old man, I almost forgot that I also brought a group of cute little guys. Their territory was invaded and destroyed, and now they have no place to live. It seems that you need to arrange it, please. The Great Prophet bowed respectfully to the Demon Kings. Don't do this, old man. The Demon Kings who had come to their senses came forward and bowed to him, then helped him up and signaled others to hurry up with their eyes. Although the Demon Kings who were signaled were unwilling, they had to do it. So the group of Demon Kings dispersed. The Great Prophet seemed to be relieved, and his posture seemed to have aged by dozens of years in an instant. He sat on the ground with a satisfied smile on his face, obviously because the other demons had a place to stay. This scene was seen by the Demon Kings who avoided him like a tiger. Sure enough, the Great Prophet is the future of the demons. Unlike outsiders like the Lich King, the feeling brought by the Great Prophet is a real beacon. Lord Prophet! Lord Prophet! Suddenly a voice sounded, accompanied by a short figure slowly walking up. Who is it? The Demon Kings were alerted instantly, and the fluctuations of fighting emanated from their bodies. They couldn't deal with the Great Prophet, but they had no problem dealing with some other small fish. So, when they saw the Goblin Warrior rushing up in a hurry, the Demon Kings all looked alert, and some even stepped forward to stop him, trying to stop this ridiculous and bold goblin. Just because you, a goblin, want to see the Great Prophet? Is it possible? Moreover, weren't they rescued by the Great Prophet? They are people blessed by the Great Prophet. Get out of the way! The Goblin Warrior shouted coldly when he saw someone blocking his way forward. The Demon King was not worried that a goblin could stir up any big waves, but after this angry shout, they actually felt the terrible aura of the Goblin Warrior. This guy! He has the strength and pressure to become a Demon King. It even feels much stronger than most of the Demon Kings present. It feels like he can be compared to the devil. In fact, it was the heroic spirit in it that caused this illusion. But the Goblin Warrior himself was definitely not weak. In such a stalemate, the Goblin Warrior even frightened the opponent in the true sense. Humph! The Goblin Warrior knocked the Demon King to the ground with a gloomy face, and walked straight to the Great Prophet who was sitting on the ground in the distance. The other Demon Kings retreated. Chapter 270 Goblin King. The goblin who could easily force the Demon King to retreat was just a fluke? Who would believe this except a fool? If there were no corresponding means, they probably wouldn't dare to confront it head-on, and fight against a tiger, unless you were stupid, or there were other factors. So, now even if there was only a goblin in front of them, they didn't dare to be presumptuous. Weak when facing a strong, strong when facing a weak, this is one of the reasons why the demons can continue to this day. Avoid the sharp edge, take his life while he is sick, this is the real strategy and survival rule. After all, it is rare to run into the muzzle of a gun, at least it rarely happens in the Demon Valley and the Demon King Palace. Until the goblin came in front of the Great Prophet, the Demon Kings looked at it quietly, not knowing what its purpose was. The Goblin Warrior also seemed stupid, standing there stupidly, like a guard, with a faint aura gathering all over his body, as if he was ready to take action at any time. After seeing this scene, the other demon kings sighed and left one after another. Originally, they wanted to get some benefits from the great prophet. After all, what the great prophet did just now has brought them great benefits. If this guy can dig deeper, maybe he can get greater benefits? As a result, the guards here rushed over before the plan was launched. Presumably, the reason why this goblin is so powerful is because of the great prophet, right? The demon kings all thought so. The great prophet and the goblin didn't want to explain this matter, so let it pass as time goes by. The goblin warrior and the great prophet just stood there motionless. At the same time, in the magic tower fortress, lights and decorations were everywhere, and there was joy everywhere. As if they had noticed this matter in advance, many gods who suddenly rose up shrank their hands and feet, fearing that they would suddenly offend this terrible couple on this festive day. That's right, after the last trial by the gods, Xiao Yun already had a resounding name in the god realm, called the God Eater. Who dares to risk their own death to cause trouble when the God Eater gets married? Of course, there are also some fearless people who spread all kinds of rumors in the back, such as what? The reason why the goddess of nature and the goddess of darkness joined forces to marry the God Eater is to exterminate the gods. Exterminate their former companions. Of course, this can only be said in their mouths and then spread out, and the actual impact is that some people will regard Qinjia and Xiao Shu as traitors, which is not a good reputation. Xiao Yun didn't want to pay attention to it, until now, when getting married. The statues in the church are a problem. Because according to the construction of some ordinary people, the statues for worship should be the captured wedding goddess Moose, but now, the only person they have to worship when they get married is this. It's embarrassing that when they swore brotherhood, the one that Guan Urge worshipped was actually Guan Ir Yi. Who can you go to for justice? So Xiao Yun fell into deep thought, staring at the scene in front of him for a long time without daring to speak. Oh, hurry up, it doesn't matter who you worship, it's just a ceremony anyway. Xiao Shu looked impatient. Qinjia also nodded in agreement, but the blush on her face had spread to her ears. The white wedding dresses on the two seemed to sparkle in the sun. Looking at these holy and beautiful people, Xiao Yun's excitement was indescribable. These two are his wives. Did you make a vow in front of the wedding god Mu Si that you will never leave each other no matter whether the other party is poor or rich, sick or healthy, old or dead? The priest looked strange when he read the oath, and couldn't help but look up at the wedding god Mu Si under the huge colorful glass behind him, his eyes full of helplessness. Isn't there a ready-made person? Why do you need a statue? And you have captured the person as a prisoner, is it interesting to say this? The priest didn't understand, but he had to do it. I do. Xiao Shu and Qingyue said in unison, almost at the same time, they read out their vows, they do. On the contrary, Xiao Yun fell into a stagnation. He had read out the vows once before. He had read out the wedding vows in the world of Naruto before, and now he did it here again. While still in fear, Xiao Yun looked around, and his magic perception reached the peak, fearing that another teleportation array would send him away directly. If that really happened, he would probably be so angry that his hair would fall off. What are you doing? You don't want to, right? Xiao Shu was very angry and stretched out his hand to pinch Xiao Yun's ear. It hurts. It hurts. Let go, my wife. Xiao Yun immediately pretended to be afraid of pain and shouted with his teeth bared. Of course, Xiao Shu didn't use much strength. He also looked around with a bitter smile. You also know how we got here. Xiao Shu let go of his hand after hearing this, and looked around with a lingering fear. The people watching the ceremony were a little puzzled, but they all watched. No one dared to question why this wedding would marry two people. Even if someone knew that the two girls were actually the same person, the people present did not dare to say a word. I do. Xiao Yun finally took a deep breath and closed his eyes after careful consideration, and said this. He was waiting for something else to happen. But after waiting for a long time, he only felt that the two people approached him, and then pecked him lightly on his mouth, and then the two fled from here like flying. From the red ears under their high pile hair, it can be seen that the two of them were eager to find a crack in the ground and drill into it directly. Xiao Yun smiled bitterly, then shook his head, stood up and followed. Getting married, is this the first time, or the second time? The first time didn't work out, the second time was successful, so what should I do next? Life was a little confused. At this moment, Xiao Yun suddenly felt the message from the great prophet. The message from the great prophet was about the secret of the center of the world. Indeed, according to Xiao Yun's plan, it has achieved great results. After all, now I have received the message from the great prophet, saying that the demons have started the meeting. After receiving the news, Xiao Yun walked towards his room while transferring his consciousness to the great prophet. In the demon meeting room, the great prophet deservedly sat in the first seat. At this moment, all the demon leaders except the Lich King came to the demon meeting. That guy may have realized that the demon's attitude towards him will change, and the last incident can be detected on him without any evidence, so now he basically dare not come. My lord, the secret of the center of the world has always been controlled by the Lich King. The future of our demon race seems to be in the center of the world. This world is in ruins. If we want to become better, we can only go to another world. A demon king raised this matter. Chapter 271 Playing with Children. The first time he heard this, the great prophet, Xiao Yun, was shocked. These demons have already controlled to this extent? Then why don't they open the magic circle in the center of the world quickly? Could it be that the world tree and the void illusion that are closest to the center of the world are the world tree and the void illusion that are closest to the center of the world? The world tree in the center of the world is a living legend. If it is this guy, it is indeed possible to tell the Lich King the secret of the center of the world. So, the guy in the void illusion has not broken through yet? Xiao Yun had a contemptuous smile on his face. Don't be afraid. The demon kings were stunned. What the great prophet said was very interesting. Not to be feared, that is to say, not to the point where it can be scared. The demon kings were delighted. If that was the case, the Lich King really was not to be feared. Instead, the Lich bones controlled by the Lich King were a problem. After all, it was a method that the demon kings of all generations had obtained for immortality, sacrificing their bodies to achieve the current level of almost immortality. Even if the Lich King's own strength was not enough to turn all the demon kings into undead bones, after tens of thousands of years, there were many overlapping and replacement demon kings. So the most troublesome thing now is, what to do. Even those people in the demon god realm may not guarantee that they can solve the huge number of demon king bones. This is a very scary problem. Of course, if Xiao Yun took action himself, it would be easy to solve it. After all, it is easy to break through the illusion of nothingness, and even those demon king bones are not a problem. The problem is that Xiao Yun needs to ensure that his strength will not be damaged and that he can deal with the real troubles after the center of the world. He has a hunch that the secret of the center of the world is the real trouble. Other troubles are not a problem, so the most basic question now is whether the demon kings are willing to help him solve the big cancer of the Lich King? Well, the demon kings looked at each other and seemed not to speak first. The scene became very awkward for a while. Xiao Yun had long realized that these guys were extremely careful about their feathers, so no matter what, they would not be stupid enough to make things more troublesome. They have a headache more than anyone else. Now that the great prophet said that he was very sure of this, these demon kings all started to think about other things. If possible, let the great prophet solve it, and they can be the hands-off boss. It seems that the certainty I just said has now become zero. The great prophet changed his tone, and the contempt on his face turned into helplessness. The demon kings were stunned for a moment. What's going on? Subconsciously, the demon kings thought that the great prophet was going to use his trump card. The return of the great prophet was just a means to contain the Lich King. The demon kings did not want another arrogant Lich King to appear, so they were no less defensive against the great prophet than against the Lich King. However, now, the words of the great prophet made them feel something was wrong. If they were not careful, a second Lich King would really appear. What I said was nothing to be afraid of, it depends on you, not on myself. The great prophet sighed and scanned the demon kings present. The demon kings' hearts sank when they heard this. Sure enough, this old guy had bad intentions. Now they treat the great prophet as a guy who came to seize power, not a guide who can lead the demons and provide a good future for the demons. Just like the Lich King, he did not hesitate to damage the demons for his own benefit. The fundamental interests of the tribe. Directly killed and damaged a large part of the demon territory, causing great suffering to the people there. If it weren't for the great prophet's action, a large part of the demon territory would not be repaired in the future. So now, even if the great prophet helped them, and even knowing that the great prophet was a good thing for their demons, these demon kings didn't want their power and status to be dispersed like this, dispersed to a person who would be above them. In this way, the situation seemed to become very tense. Let me tell you the plan, and you execute it. The great prophet directly intended to reveal his plan, which also had a lot of his own selfishness. Of course, this was exaggerated in the eyes of the demon kings, but it was not unacceptable. Although there would be heavy bleeding, the final result was very good, and it also showed the ambition of the great prophet. Both sides almost immediately decided in their hearts that they could cooperate. But the demon kings must not be too eager. Although it seems that there is no problem on the surface, they are the ones who issue orders, and the shadow of the great prophet basically does not exist, and the great prophet and they can receive corresponding benefits. This matter is not bad in general. But they still plan to discuss it privately. Okay, the great prophet had a helpless smile on his face. The goblin warrior looked at the great prophet with some strangeness. Cooperate with the demon kings and then ask for rewards? This is not like the style of the great prophet. But the goblin warrior did not speak, and he believed in the great prophet very much in his heart. So when everyone dispersed, the goblin warrior and the great prophet remained in the meeting hall. My lord prophet, why not? The goblin warrior finally asked his doubts. The great prophet laughed dryly twice. Just play with them, just treat it as playing with children. The goblin warrior thought about it after hearing this. Playing with children means getting into the play and cooperating with their conditions, so that you can play with children. In other words, the great prophet is indeed doing it for the good of the demons, and the conditions he proposed are just to meet the requirements of the children. The goblin warrior understood, and the great prophet did not need to explain more. Xiao Yun didn't want to say more, and his consciousness returned to himself, leaving this side to the black shadow. The wedding was held for a few days, and congratulations came one after another. The so-called gods almost sent congratulatory messages at the first time. Xiao Yun treated this as spam and didn't want to pay attention. However, some of them, especially the brave men, were very active. They are now particularly enthusiastic about conquering the Demon King Valley, but they feel a little anxious when they see Xiao Yun suddenly stagnant. This is the best opportunity. While Xiao Yun and they are gathered together, the best opportunity before they have any intention of retreating. Of course, everyone was silent after Xiao Yun held a meeting called "He is injured and cannot enter the combat state." Xiao Yun's goal was also achieved. A world without darkness is never complete. Xiao Yun himself does not want to do this evil, so in the end these bad guys can only wait for the demons to do it. Now the only thing he cares about is the problem of the center of the world. As long as that is solved, the problem will naturally be solved. In addition, the demons are now very united. After solving the Lich King, the first thing to do is to limit the troubles of the great prophet. Then they can smoothly enter the center of the world. Chapter 272 Killing Two Birds with One Stone. A few days later, all the actions of the demons were controlled by the great prophet. It was just control, but there was no actual action. After all, the demon kings of the demons have already listed the great prophet as the most dangerous. Now it is because he can't hide it that he has controlled the movements of the demon king army, otherwise the great prophet would definitely not know anything. However, even if he knew everything, the great prophet could not point fingers at these demon kings. Now the demon kings have thought about it and directly bypassed the great prophet and started the plan. I believe that they will definitely do the conditions promised to the great prophet, otherwise this kind of thing of killing the donkey after it has done its work will affect their dignity as demon kings. At least the face that was suppressed by Xiao Yun and made to give in again and again has reappeared at this moment. So, a large army was assembled in such a mighty manner. All the demon kings had a firm goal, which was to defeat the Lich King. In the future, everything about the center of the world tree, and the illusion of nothingness would be controlled by them. The great prophet would also be followed. Safety and status would be guaranteed, but freedom and privacy would be hard to say. In the past, it was because the Lich King also had an extraordinary status and outstanding abilities, otherwise they would not have foolishly agreed to the Lich King's conditions. At that time, they thought that no matter how many Lich Kings there were, he was just one person. Even if those undead bones were controlled by him, but in essence these undead are still their own people of the demon clan, and the Lich King himself is treated as an outsider. What is the result? The result is that the Lich King is the only one in power, and the demon city has become its base camp, turning it into an iron barrel. The demon kings have thought about uniting to deal with this guy, but the final result is only heavy casualties. If it were normal, it would be fine. They only need time to repair the heavy casualties, but now it is different. The magic tower fortress is opened, and all humans have joined the ranks of fighting against the demons. After all, the relationship between the two is a natural enemy. Once there is any strange discovery, I believe that if the status is reversed, the demons will do the same as humans, and join the whole tribe to defeat humans, capture the tower fortress, and enter the hinterland of the human kingdom to kill and plunder. In another case, if something happens to the demons, humans will definitely join in this matter like a hound smelling blood. That's why the demon kings are worried. If they get rid of this cancer, their lives will be guaranteed, but their status will fall to the worst. When the Lich King was still weak, they didn't take it seriously and regarded it as an ordinary small cancer. Anyone could get rid of this guy without any effort. Moreover, the Lich King's technical strength seems to be not bad, so the demons let it grow and spread spontaneously. When it was a little threatening at the beginning, it was just the strength of an orthodox demon king. The scale was reached and the internal was similar. To kill it, only an ordinary old demon king was needed, but the old demon king would definitely be damaged. Maybe if it was just like this, things would be much simpler. The demon kings have been wary of each other for a long time, and they have been thinking about annexing each other for a long time. But the ambition of the Lich King is not just that. From the beginning, the demon king's strength began to develop secretly. Originally, the demon kings were unwilling to solve the Lich King for the sake of the demon clan, which would cause their own vision to be damaged and swallowed up by other demon kings. The Lich King also changed from a technician to a big boss who controls the world. To put it bluntly, the reason why the demons are willing to unite now is because of the righteousness of the demons and to make up for their selfishness in the past. In fact, the demons have begun to go downhill in recent years. If the Lich King, this old scourge, is not solved, sooner or later all the demon kings and demon residents of the entire demon clan will be harmed by the Lich King. Sooner or later, it will be the result of becoming slaves and being destroyed. There is no difference. So before that, it is better to cut off the arm directly. Although it is painful and the consequences are great, the result is also very tempting. This time, all the demon kings have made a great effort. Standing in the rear of the army of the demon dead city, the great prophet seemed to rush over as if he was worried. The demon kings did not care about him, but they still kept a watchful eye in secret. Who knows what this suddenly appearing great prophet will do? Will it be the second Lich King with wolfish ambitions? Fortunately, the great prophet seemed to know his own limitations and did not rush forward. He kept his distance. Most of the ordinary demon soldiers did not know who this old man with the goblin warrior guarding him was. There was no problem for a while. Lich King! Stinky Bones, your doom has come. The demon kings began to shout at the dark and desolate plain filled with tombstones and dead trees. It seemed that the sound had the magical effect of shouting. Many floating green flames burned out of thin air on the floor opposite, like flowers that suddenly bloomed, one by one, and one by one. The opposite side suddenly became a desolate cemetery garden. In addition, the dark place never saw the sun, so these flowers looked even more dazzling. The demon kings all looked solemn. Undead fire. There were dense undead fires everywhere. Undead fire is not only useful for undead creatures and ghosts, but also for living creatures. Even compared to the undead, the effect of the undead fire on living things is no less than any super magic and high-level power. This is a powerful force between the real elements and magic, lower than nature, but higher than nature to some extent. The demon kings were in trouble. The undead fire is a fire without source and root, it burns whatever it catches, even the elements. And the undead aura accumulated here for tens of thousands of years is simply the best nutrient for them. It is conceivable that if you step into it, the ubiquitous undead aura can even become a node for the undead fire to teleport, and you can reach the place full of undead aura in an instant. At that time, the battle will not be an ordinary slaughter. Instead, it is a one-sided delivery of heads, or queuing up to enter the opponent's slaughterhouse. The demon kings were in trouble. They knew that the Lich King was also afraid of them. If they fought, the Lich King's losses would not be less than the painful price paid by the demon kings. That's why both sides were anxious. They didn't really want to fight, but for the future, we must fight hard. But the damage will be serious after the real fight. It is not okay to send it blindly, which is even more anxious. For a while, everyone was in trouble and didn't know what to do. This matter is difficult to solve. I guess you are not sincere, otherwise we can take a step back. The voice of the Lich King came from the undead fire. Chapter 273 Take a Step Back. It is asking for peace, and it is also afraid. Although the demon kings were overjoyed, they were also more solemn. They knew the situation better than anyone else. But I didn't expect that the so-called uniting all the Demon King army troops to attack the Demon Dead City would be so troublesome. Originally, the discussion on paper was fine, and it was even decided that some cannon fodder troops could be sent to die to make this matter easier. But now when facing this matter, it is not the kind of heroic spirit of a real hero cutting off his arm, but it seems to be trapped in a quagmire. If they are not careful, they will fall into the quagmire and become dry bones to sleep here forever. Can they accept this result? Can they really tolerate this happening? Obviously, they are confused and their swords are slow, so they still can't do it. Otherwise, retreat? For some reason, this idea came to the minds of the Demon Kings. Before the war starts, retreat first, let this matter gradually fade away, and let their descendants worry about the future things? This idea occupied a large part. Even many Demon Kings thought of the fate of their tribes after experiencing this war. After suffering heavy losses, the result is direct destruction. Can they really accept this result? Can they? Is it okay? Hesitated. The long-term sluggishness has greatly affected the morale of the army. Many people feel cold all over just looking at the dense and everywhere undead fire, not to mention stepping over here to join the war over there. Are we fighting with our own people? It's unnecessary, right? If it's with humans, I will join in without hesitation. Some demon soldiers muttered this subconsciously, looking at their best friends beside them. But the friend beside him shook his head solemnly. You don't know what the undead means to all of us? Think about it, now a Lich King can make the entire demon race go to war. If the Demon Kings become gods and the new Demon Kings join the gap, then there are always demons who understand things. Everyone must know what the undead means. Undead, evil creatures that devour other creatures and turn them into their own life and power. They are usually weak, even similar to the relationship between humans and venomous snakes. This thing is not only painful to bite, but also deadly, but they just can't beat humans, and even a large part of them are suppressed by humans. From a group perspective, they are truly weak, and it is easy for humans to exterminate them. But there is a problem. The Lich King is not just a venomous snake now. It is also a venomous snake that can exterminate humans. If you want to kill it, you have to pay a painful price. This is the situation now. The characteristic of the Lich is to devour the lives of other creatures to strengthen and preserve itself. Once the old demons in the Demon King city fall into a deep sleep, become gods directly, and enter the realm of demons, this gap will cause the Lich King to make a comeback. At that time, the demons have no power to fight this guy, and they will even pay a more painful price than now. And their descendants, family members. Either they become vassal bones of the undead, or they are absorbed into skin and bones. This is much more uncomfortable than being a slave to humans. It is worse than death to live in fear day and night. Don't talk about dignity or not. The next second, you may be devoured by a lich in your sleep. That's right, the Lich King is not alone, it also has its own tribe. This guy is a true emperor, leading the Lich clan to an unprecedented level. In this world, his achievements are beyond the reach of any Lich. Once he lets go, the strength and power of the Lich clan will be greatly improved, and it is not impossible for the whole world to become a land of the dead. The first demon stormtrooper, assemble. Get ready. The Demon Kings laughed bitterly. Yes, is there any choice? If they don't sacrifice themselves at this time, they will only be famous in the future, but a bad name. Imagine that their descendants and grandchildren point at their portraits and names and curse, look. It's all because of this dog's greed for pleasure that we can only be livestock kept by the Lich clan now. This picture is too beautiful, they dare not think about it, so in order to avoid this picture, they fight. The blood of the demons is not only aimed at humans only then. Even if I fail this time, my descendants will remember my achievements. Even if I can't have many children and grandchildren in the future, I can point to my portrait and say when my children and grandchildren are down and out, look, this is our most honorable Demon King ancestor. They sacrificed their precious lives. What a noble existence. They are our lifelong glory. They gave everything for us. Even if they fail, they are still our heroes. Or, after success, when I have both sons and daughters and grandchildren, I can personally sit in the courtyard of the Demon King city, look like I'm reminiscing, and tell my descendants about my past stories. Life is always beautiful. There seems to be no difference between taking a step forward and taking a step back. Charge! With the roar of the wild bull, a series of demons such as centaurs, bull demons, goblins, etc. rushed forward, and the earth shook. Then you can't blame me. The Lich King also snorted coldly, and then the undead fires began to move. As long as the demons who stepped into the cemetery of the demon city were directly swallowed and covered by the green enchanting flames. They did not scream, but just charged forward on their own, even though their bones and flesh had been carbonized and collapsed. For the descendants. For the calf that was still crawling on the ground and drooling everywhere. For the little goblin who started to carve wooden swords. For his sturdy and unfeminine wife. Fight. Charge. There is no retreat. Only forward. It looks like I have to move too. The great prophet next to the goblin warrior walked slowly, took a light step, and instantly moved forward several meters as if teleporting, and reached the border of the demon city in just a few dozen steps. I will deal with this undead fire and this undead aura, you wait a moment. The voice of the great prophet sounded. The demon kings were stunned with solemn expressions, looking at the hunched figure standing high in the air. They were very puzzled. Shouldn't this old guy take advantage of this moment to open his bloody mouth and bite a mouthful of meat from them? This is a good opportunity for the lion to open his mouth and take advantage of the fire. It's just my duty, the great prophet silently added, and then slowly stepped into the cemetery of the demon city. The demon kings fell into deep thought after listening to this inexplicable supplement. The memory of the great prophet resurfaced in their heads. The great prophet is the guide who leads the demons forward. The only purpose of their existence is to guide the demons forward. For the safety of the demons, the great prophet has the necessary obligation to sacrifice himself, even if the enemy is too powerful. In fact, his existence is a bit like a guide dog in a pack. He is the most foresight, leading the pack to prosperity, avoiding crises, making appropriate choices, and when necessary, he will stand up when encountering large beasts, turning himself into the prey of the beasts, and begin to attract the attention of the beasts, so as to prevent casualties in the pack. A true leader, a guide and teacher of the demons. Chapter 274 Self-extinguishing. With the help of the great prophet, the breath of the dead and the fire of the dead quickly dissipated, like the sun melting snow. The demons present believed that they would never forget that lofty figure in their lifetime. This person did not put forward any conditions for the demons. He went out directly to face the fire of the dead and the breath of the dead of the Lich King. Even though they knew that the great prophet had such means and would be safe, they still had some concerns about him. The demon kings in particular were like children who didn't know what to do, and even forgot to stop the charging demon soldiers. What the great prophet said just now was conveyed to the demon kings, and the soldiers couldn't hear it at all, and the demon kings also knew why he did it. The agreement with the demon kings was that they would not interfere with the authority of the demons. So now, after hearing his message, only a very small number of demon kings subconsciously recalled their soldiers. Most of the demon kings were still in a daze, not knowing what their mood and actions should be. Come back. The demon kings finally forced themselves to calm down and summoned their demon soldiers back one after another. The charging team seemed to have been prepared for retreat long ago, and began to evacuate in an orderly manner. Although the demons did not have the marching efficiency and effect of ants, they were definitely not bad. In an instant, the charging army retreated directly, and only the great prophet dragged his hunched body to continue rushing towards the demon city cemetery over there. You've come just in time. Die. You're just dreaming if you want to get involved in my current position. The Lich King's angry voice sounded, and countless undead breaths surged wildly because of the arrival of the great prophet, gathering in the sky, and formed a blazing green skull with the cooperation of the undead fire. The green skull rushed directly towards the great prophet while speaking, emitting a sharp lich scream. Hearing this harsh voice, the demons covered their ears one after another, and most of their faces were filled with sadness and fear, pain, and struggle. This thing has mental damage and will effectively hurt the soul. All demons feel deeply disgusted and helpless about this thing. There is no way. There are very few demons who can grow to the level of the Lich King, so they have never worried about this thing. Usually, when they see an undead on the roadside, they just kick it twice, spit and curse it. You can imagine how much they hate liches. Now, the screams of the Lich King almost cover all of them, and it is difficult to escape even if they want to. In this powerful and disgusting feeling, they can only cover their ears and look in the direction of the great prophet like begging. They begged this old hunchback to help them. It's painful. It's really painful. Presumably, after experiencing this incident, the Lich clan will really be included in the ranks of being killed or even wanted just like humans do. As for such oppression and bullying of a race, it seems to be somewhat uncommon. After all, who would like cockroaches, rats, and mosquitoes? Young man, learn from your mistakes. The great prophet said such a meaningless sentence, and then waved his hand lightly. The green fire skull that attacked head-on and screamed was directly dissipated by the light wave of this hand. No. A more piercing and sharp voice sounded than before, and this time there was a faint sense of despair in the voice of the Lich King. Now, the crisis that the demons were originally deeply troubled by emotions instantly turned into the fear of their heads exploding. Even many demon soldiers had their heads blown off by this terrible scream. Gulp. The demon kings swallowed their saliva, they knelt on the ground in pain, holding their heads, and raised their eyes with difficulty to look at the great prophet who was high above in the sky. Please, please, help us. Please. The demon kings wailed in their hearts, but they dared not shout out. Now they were like real children, looking at the only beacon, the giant of light standing in the darkness, begging him to save themselves and others. The screams of the undead meant that the emotions of the undead fluctuated greatly. When this sound sounded, it meant that the lich was trapped in emotions, whether it was anger, sadness, or fear, it would emit this disgusting sound of all things. The wailing of the dead always makes people full of negative emotions. Of course, at this time, the Lich King must have been trapped in a situation where he could not move. This can be regarded as a double-edged sword of the Lich. Although it caused great damage to the enemy, it also became a state of being tied up. Alas, the great prophet sighed, slowly walked to the cemetery where the Lich King was hiding, and pressed his palm on it. If Xiao Yun had not had the strength to capture the Lich King directly for a period of time after reaching level 100, even if he had a more powerful Black Shadow army, it would have turned into nothingness under this scream. But now it is different. After capturing many gods and absorbing the so-called divine power in their bodies, that is, the power of elements, Xiao Yun's strength has increased a lot. It is no exaggeration to say that the current Lich King is facing a real divine weapon. A strong man with the power of gods, the great prophet. Although he is the great prophet who belongs to Xiao Yun in the true sense. But Xiao Yun knows that the use of this great prophet is only to confuse the demons. He does not want to exterminate the demons and let them enter a weak state. But he is still waiting for the demons to give him a stable living world. Even if the return of magic technology will cause the demons to enter a period of lows, the power of the world tree is not to be underestimated. Sooner or later, the demons will be equal to humans. This is the law of this world. No. Impossible. The wailing voice of the Lich King did not decrease at all. From the beginning, this guy ignored his undead power, as if he didn't exist, and treated his undead power as air. Who are you? The Lich King asked in a sad voice. The great prophet just sighed silently, the great prophet of the demon race. The Lich King lowered his hand, and the green flames in his eyes went out directly. Despair, real despair. The existence of the undead is to bring despair, and once they feel despair themselves and cannot resist, the only way is to extinguish themselves. In this way, their souls can rest in peace in the end, and they will not leave the true undead fire burning forever. That would be very painful, so it is better to extinguish themselves and reincarnate directly. Well, it's a destination, the great prophet sighed, watching the skeleton in his hand gradually turn into smoke and dissipate. Patting casually, the great prophet walked in the direction in front of him. The demon kings stared blankly at the figure walking away leisurely. At this moment, they only felt a chill all over their bodies. Chapter 275 One's Own Strength. If the great prophet if it really comes true, maybe unifying the demon world won't be a problem? The demon kings have this feeling for some reason. They even feel that it was a bit too arrogant to negotiate such conditions with it before. And the great prophet is also very satisfied with their current reaction. There is nothing more satisfying than stepping into the heartland of the demon clan with a legitimate reason. If he sneaks in rashly, he may not be able to withstand the attack of the army of the Lich King and the demon clan. Even the possibility of breaking the secret of the center of the world in the future will be reduced to the lowest. But now it's different. The whole demon clan is acting with him. Xiao Yun doesn't believe that a mere great prophet can convince them so much, and even many people with ulterior motives will doubt his purpose and origin. None of these are important. The important thing is that the secret of the center of the world can be touched by himself now. Well, the great prophet, he is here as expected. The demons followed the great prophet quietly and came to the world tree again. The world tree is a huge tree, with no end in sight, just like the vast sea. And such a tree can talk, and its face can't be seen anywhere. The great prophet himself was a little surprised. The other party said he was a great prophet? If he said he was a great prophet, he would definitely not believe it. How could he be so ignorant? In fact, even if your origin is unknown, and you may not even be a demon, you are still the great prophet of my demon clan. The World Tree directly expressed the doubts of the great prophet. Hearing this explanation, the expressions of the other demon kings who were originally a little depressed now became particularly relaxed. The great prophet also breathed a sigh of relief when looking at the demon kings around him. Obviously these guys knew their identities, and the World Tree might have told them about it. But the demon kings pretended not to know and cooperated with him. No wonder they directly jumped over him and started the battle, and even waited for him to help them when they were in crisis. It seems like this is a case of borrowing a knife to kill someone. The Lich King has indeed become a huge threat to the entire demon clan, so they must have solved it, and they must have kept a backup plan to deal with this outsider. No wonder the demons just now behaved so badly. The sleeping demon gods must have been patiently waiting for it. Once they find something wrong, they will directly take action. Whether it is the Lich King or the Great Prophet, they will be destroyed at the first time. The demon clan really has a good plan. But the Great Prophet felt like he was running naked in public at this moment, and they all saw it. This feeling of self-deception is really a bit uncomfortable. Since you are here, please enter the illusion of nothingness, and your consciousness can enter it. The World Tree suddenly shrank and became the size of a normal tree, and you can see the human face on its tree. The Great Prophet stood there and fell silent. My Lord Prophet, I believe you. And at this moment, a voice sounded. All the demon kings turned their eyes to the source of the voice. It's a goblin warrior in golden armor. The fighting power shown by this guy is definitely not bad, it can be said to be unparalleled in the world. Now it said to cheer, many demon kings felt inexplicably weird. Don't you know that this guy is fake? He is an outsider. Of course, under the contemptuous, suspicious, and hesitant eyes of the demon kings, the goblin warrior said very firmly, even if he is not a real great hero, even if he is an outsider, he must be my great hero. To me, he is not an outsider. There was only determination in his eyes. He believed that the great prophet would be able to do it. The demon kings were silent. They just thought that this goblin was a fool and couldn't understand what he was doing. Of course, when watching the great prophet slowly walk into the illusion of nothingness, the demon kings felt very complicated. It was clear that this guy was an unknown enemy, and he was allowed to enter the illusion of nothingness. Even with the admission of the World Tree, they found it a bit difficult to accept. Of course, it doesn't mean that all demon kings can't understand this matter. After all, many demon kings now admire the great prophet. Even if this guy is not a real demon, or even a spy sent by the enemy, there is absolutely no problem if the World Tree confirms it. A few demon kings believe him. They have even recognized the existence of this great prophet. Watching him walk into the illusion of nothingness. At the same time, Xiao Yun felt an inexplicable palpitation when the great prophet entered the illusion of nothingness. Something is wrong, it is completely wrong. The current situation is supposed to be very smooth, and even reached the best expectations in his mind, but what is the result? What is this palpitation? The consciousness is transferred to the great prophet. At this moment, the great prophet has entered the illusion of nothingness. Void the Wuhuan realm looks like a forest. After sensing it, it seems that there is nothing wrong. It is just a normal forest, except that there are more magic elements. Occasionally, you can see a lot of dry bones and giant bones on the road. Most of them are probably people who have mistakenly entered here and are blocked here because they can't get out. Continue to walk forward. After walking for a while, I found that the distance in front and behind me has become nothingness. Only the area where I am walking forward can show the appearance of a forest. In other words, I am like standing still in a map that can be refreshed continuously. In fact, there is nothingness all around, only the area under my feet and the area within my sight has pictures. In other words, I really entered the illusion area, not the outer area. Is there anyone? Xiao Yun tried to shout. But no one responded. There was only an empty nothingness and the illusion in front of me. Although I was walking, Xiao Yun was sure that I was actually in the same place. Instead of walking, it would be better to stand here directly. If I continue to explore, it will only be a forest. Come here, come here. Suddenly a voice sounded, almost as soon as Xiao Yun stopped walking, it sounded in his head. It was a very evil voice, as if someone was waving at him quietly, with a smile on his face. This weird feeling should be impossible to believe, but Xiao Yun walked towards the voice very naturally. The one here is the Black Shadow. Before coming in, Xiao Yun was sure that he could switch consciousness freely, and even when the Black Shadow here was killed and dissipated, it would not hurt his original body at all. And this great prophet himself can also collapse very autonomously. In order to prevent being unable to leave after entering the illusion, Xiao Yun even set a timed dissipation command in the body of the great prophet. As long as the time is up, even if Xiao Yun is really trapped in it and can't extricate himself, he can directly return to his original body because of the dissipation of the Black Shadow. Chapter 276 The Seal is lifted. While walking towards the sound, Xiao Yun is still constantly using the Black Shadow to try to spread and expand here. Unfortunately, he found nothing. On the surface, it was a forest, but in fact, there was nothing. However, as he moved, Xiao Yun gradually felt the existence of something. This was the only existence with shadow and entity in the whole illusion. It was hard to say whether it was a living being or something else. It just felt like there was a breath of life, and it was also very stiff, just like a frog in a jar. This feeling was extremely strong. Therefore, Xiao Yun concluded that there was a seal array in front of him. You are here. The destined person, open my seal. I will be loyal to you. My power will shake the whole world. The voice sounded again, but this time it seemed very excited. Obviously, this change was caused by Xiao Yun's arrival. You know, I have been waiting here for a long time. There was a hint of madness in the voice. However, Xiao Yun calmly bypassed the seal and walked straight behind the seal. You came for the center of the world, right? And I am the center of the world. When this voice sounded again, Xiao Yun stopped. Indeed, he came for the center of the world, and after the inheritance of the world, it seems that the secret of the center of the world is very dangerous. According to Xiao Yun's guess and the information given by the center of the world, there might be a teleportation array here, but now it is a living thing. Perhaps, there is not only a living thing here, but also a teleportation array? Xiao Yun fell into deep thought, with a face full of suspicion. Why is this guy so anxious to find him? And what about the other dry bones? Since those people can come in, it means that they can also hear the voice that this guy said, and they must be able to find something sealed here. Even if they can't find it, they can detect the sound and judge something. But those people turned into dry bones and stayed here forever. Maybe there is some secret that cannot be told, but Xiao Yun doesn't plan to worry for the time being. After all, there is a backup. Wait, backup? Xiao Yun didn't know why, and subconsciously opened the backup he had set before. But when he saw it, he was almost scared to death. What happened? The time bomb that was set before was useless. The dark power that was originally set to continuously weaken the power of the outer explosion seemed to be stagnant at this moment. If it were normal, Xiao Yun might find it quickly and respond as soon as the problem occurred, but now he found that there was no room for maneuver. He was trapped here, and the original backup plan was no longer usable here. And the guy who was sealed in it actually invited him again at this moment. What? Open the seal here with me? I am the center of the world, and the center of the world is me. We can rule the world together. With my strong strength. Of course, Xiao Yun was not interested in this, and he tried to restore his consciousness to his original body, but unfortunately he still failed. Obviously, he is really in danger now. Unable to leave, it means that his body will be solved by the shadows. Fortunately, the shadows can open the shadow space on their own and take out the things stored in it. In addition, Xiao Shu and Qingya can solve the problem and make decisions very smoothly. So Xiao Yun has no other emotions and thoughts except wanting to leave here. The other party saw that Xiao Yun suddenly fell silent, so he was sure that this guy must be thinking about his generous conditions. If he agreed, he could also successfully unblock it. Then he would leave this ghost place directly and enter the kingdom continent. Let them know how terrible they are. Xiao Yun was thinking, why not sleep here first? Anyway, this is a consciousness body, even if it encounters danger, it's okay. He did it as he said, and Xiao Yun lay down on the spot and slept on the ground silently. The thing in the seal was also surprised to see Xiao Yun disappear like this. Doesn't this guy want to leave? Just sleep here? What's going on? Xiao Yun is not in a hurry, but it is almost dying of anxiety. Those other guys can hardly find it here, let alone hear its voice. Even many people died in front of it. I don't know how many years have passed. It is almost dying of anxiety. Now it's hard to see a guy who can find it and even talk to it. He will definitely be able to open the seal and give it a new life. But he is not in a hurry. He is almost dying of anxiety. It has been tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years of being sealed forever. Even seeing a person makes me feel ecstatic. Once the Lord of the gods in this world, his powerful strength is the most powerful. Even the god of war Ares is just a shoe-carrying material in front of him. But now he is stuck in such a hellhole. I'm going to die. I'm so annoyed. He swore that if this guy let him out, he would tear him to pieces. Even if this guy was just a clone, or even a clone with a lot of power, because the Lord of the gods found that this guy could even threaten him. Of course, it was just a threat, and he didn't care too much. At most, it would hurt a little to get bitten, and there was basically nothing to worry about. However, this guy still made people angry. I wish I could get out of the seal and punch this guy a few times, and then tear him to pieces. After a few days, Xiao Yun finally woke up from the forest in the illusion. What do you think? The voice became much softer, and even sounded very natural, as if it was really humble. But after hearing his voice, Xiao Yun's heart became more solemn. The lower this guy's attitude was, the more defensive Xiao Yun was against him, and, relatively speaking, the more he couldn't believe what he said. So, for a while, he was stuck in a deadlock, and Xiao Yun didn't want to explore here, because it was a pure waste of time. A place without a shadow meant nothing, it was a void. A true void, nothing. I talked to the world tree before I came here, so you'd better tell me everything you can say, otherwise I'll wait here for the time of the clone to end. Xiao Yun thought about it and finally made a decision. World tree? That old thing is not dead yet? No, it is willing to share information with you? The Lord of the Gods looked at the person in front of him again in a daze. What kind of person is it that can be recognized by the world tree? Even he, the Lord of the Gods, could not make the world tree recognize him, and even ended up being sealed. It is conceivable how high the vision and requirements of the world tree are. Chapter 277 Unsealing. Okay, I'll tell you. The Lord of the Gods' voice had a hint of contempt and a bit of ferocity, obviously because the memory reminded him of something bad, and even affected his current mood. So much so that now he didn't care about pretending. A long time ago the Lord of the Gods told a story. It was nothing more than how a weak person grew up to be a strong person, and finally after becoming a god, he was able to retain the position of a god and survive in the world, instead of directly ascending to become a kind of eternal will. This brought great benefits to his rule, and almost the entire world was under his command, of course, except for the demons. The demons also have sleeping true gods. Although those true gods will eventually dissipate with the passage of time, without exception, the combat power erupted by those true gods is not inferior to that of the real gods, and even the huge number makes him, the so-called Lord of the Gods, feel unspeakable fear. So, in order to face this fear, he used his most powerful power to directly invade the heartland of the demons, which is the so-called center of the world, and found the world tree here. He learned a lot from the world tree, and even got a glimpse of the truth at the center of the world. After getting this glimpse, his heart seemed to be covered with a layer of light gauze. Although he could see many words written on the paper behind the gauze, he could not see clearly. He almost collapsed because he could only see how many words there were but could not get a glimpse of the truth. Fortunately, he thought of another way. Since the world tree guards the truth of the world, it means that the world tree may know something. Even if he could not cross the illusion of nothingness, and even escaped from it many times, he still could not find the secret of the truth of the world. So, after looking at the world tree, the Lord of the Gods found that he had found the right place. Indeed, he got a lot of information from the world tree, and even confirmed some of his guesses. In other words, as long as he knew the method from the world tree, it would be easy to unlock the secret of the truth of the world, and in the end he might even become the master of the whole world. As a result, no matter how much it cost, the final result is nothing to say. And all the various materials and properties spent in this process were directly wasted. In any case, even if the Lord of the Gods got a lot of information, he felt that he had lost. Therefore, under this twisted mentality of unwillingness, the Lord of the Gods directly launched a revenge action against the world tree. Let this guy deeply understand whether he should go against the Lord of the Gods. Let it pay the price of playing tricks on the Lord of the Gods. Greed directly corrupted the Lord of the Gods into a monster that only knows tyranny. Then, after a lot of nonsense, the World Tree just used a little trick to turn the Lord of the Gods into a beast that entered its cage. There was no resistance at all, and it was very smooth. And the World Tree didn't have any clever arrangements, just let him collect the materials, then forge a cage by himself, and then get in by himself. This kind of being played again, and still acting seriously according to the ideas of the person who played tricks on him, the Lord of the Gods felt like a stupid donkey. A stupid ass. He got into the lock and was locked by the other party. When he reacted, his head didn't fall off, but the prison door was closed. But no one knew about this. His greed ruined him. So now he didn't know how many years he had been sealed. After all the things were explained, the contempt on Xiao Yun's face became stronger. Of course, because of this, Xiao Yun decided to release this guy. Tell me, how to unlock the seal. This was the most beautiful voice in the ears of the Lord of the Gods. Okay. The Lord of the Gods had a little idea in his mind, but this idea flashed away, and then he began to explain the method of unlocking the seal. After hearing the method, Xiao Yun fumbled and began to unlock it. The Lord of the Gods didn't seem to worry that Xiao Yun would not do it, because now Xiao Yun could only explore and sleep besides unlocking the seal. From the point of view of choosing one of these, it seems that Xiao Yun has no other choice. Therefore, under the attentive explanation of the Lord of the Gods, Xiao Yun also slowly lifted the seal. The Lord of the Gods used his lifelong learning and studied here for a long time. Perhaps the old man of the World Tree placed his hopes on Xiao Yun, hoping that Xiao Yun could get rid of the Lord of the Gods, but the Lord of the Gods knew clearly that at least the clone in front of him could not do anything to him. Another feeling of the Lord of the Gods was that people who generally explored would use various methods, such as the clone method used by Xiao Yun now, putting the clone in, injecting most of its own strength, leaving only an empty shell outside to be guarded by people. Obviously Xiao Yun is in this situation now, so the Lord of the Gods vaguely felt that he had seen the specific strength of Xiao Yun's original body through this clone. If he could get out, he must get rid of this guy who made him angry as soon as possible. The majesty of the Lord of the Gods has not yet been trampled by this little guy. Let him pay the price he deserves, this is the first thought of the Lord of the Gods. Time passed by little, and Xiao Yun unsealed most of the seals according to the Lord of the Gods. As the seals were unsealed, a strong breath came to his face, but Xiao Yun's face was still calm. The Lord of the Gods slightly restrained his breath, making himself look much weaker than Xiao Yun, so that Xiao Yun would not be afraid of his strength and not let him out. It seems that you are very confident in your strength. Xiao Yun did not speak, he could definitely feel the strength contained in the shadow of the man in front of him. But compared to his own body, this guy is still too weak. This guy may be the best among the gods, and it is not an exaggeration to say that he is the real Lord of the Gods. But there is another problem, the current era is no longer the ancient times, and he can be solved by magic technology alone. Xiao Yun feels a little sorry for him. Alas, people abandoned by the times, no, gods. Time is really a ruthless butcher knife. When the seal was finally released, the curled-up Lord of the Gods finally appeared in front of him. This is a girl in armor. Originally, Xiao Yun thought it would be a man, but when he saw her, he suddenly had a headache. Die. Xiao Yun didn't want to do it, but the Lord of the Gods didn't intend to let him go. He stretched out his hand, flashed in front of him, and strangled his neck directly. A suffocating feeling passed through the shadow's body into Xiao Yun's consciousness. Although it was painful, the original body was not affected at all, but it felt very painful in consciousness. Chapter 278 Towering Trees. This is boring, let's just find your body directly. The Lord of the Gods said indifferently, and then loosened his hand, and Xiao Yun got out of his stranglehold directly. Of course, because the Lord of the Gods escaped, the time of the entire void illusion began to flow again. Xiao Yun could feel that the shadow bomb in his clone began to count down again, but he did not foolishly let the shadow bomb continue. Instead, he cancelled the shadow bomb and stared at the Lord of the Gods with a smile on his face. The Lord of the Gods did not notice the mockery in Xiao Yun's eyes at all, but felt that this guy was frightened by the breath he burst out later. After all, her current strength is no less than any strong man, and she can even be called the strongest man except Xiao Yun. So in this case, she can be called an invincible existence. After escaping from the predicament, the first thing she wanted to do was naturally Xiao Yun, who had just made her so painful, to find Xiao Yun's original body and torture him to death. This is her current wish. However, when she came to the World Tree, she did not find any guy who met the requirements, and could only see a goblin sitting stupidly in front of the World Tree. The weirdest thing is that the World Tree is talking to him like a chatterbox, but this guy doesn't want to pay attention to him at all. You know, usually the World Tree would never talk, let alone stare at you, but now he is eager to talk to a goblin. Although this goblin has also shown strong strength and can at least hurt himself, it shouldn't be so bad that the World Tree fawns on him, right? Where is he? Where is he? I'm going to strangle him to death. The Lord of the Gods finally couldn't help it and came to the World Tree with a loud roar. Although she couldn't beat the World Tree, or even destroy it, she could pour out her emotions. Find a suitable venting point. Sure enough, that kid let you out. Alas, the World Tree didn't say much, just sighed and quietly closed his eyes and stopped talking. The Lord of the Gods cast his angry eyes on the goblin warrior sitting on the ground. You weak waste, tell me, where is the real body of that guy? The Lord of all living things ordered viciously. To be honest, any normal creature with a temper would feel very uncomfortable with this condescending and arrogant look. Why do you boss me around? I don't have a temper. My temper. But strangely, the goblin warrior raised his eyes calmly, looked at the Lord of the Gods in the sky and said lightly, the magic tower fortress is right there, go ahead. The Lord of the Gods was a little stunned. According to the goblin's current appearance, shouldn't it confront him head-on? It might not even speak very friendly, but now it tells him like this? This feeling of being despised is really bad. Just now she checked and found that there was really no one around, only a goblin who couldn't beat her in a dead tree. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. The Lord of the Gods has never been a reckless person. From the first time she checked and observed after she came out, she knew that she definitely had a plan. After being sealed for so long, she was still able to maintain her instinctive habit of exploring, instead of being blinded by anger, which was enough to prove her terrifyingness. She was fully prepared to take action now, and she would only take action when she was sure that she would be safe and sound. So when he took action, the goblin warrior felt like he was falling into an ice cave, but he was not panicked at all, but slowly walked behind the World Tree. The World Tree wanted to turn around, but it was just a tree and could not move at all. At most, it would become a tree wall to block others' way. The goblin warrior went behind it very quickly, which basically did not give it any chance to refute or refuse. So there was no way, the World Tree could only be forced to protect the goblin warrior. You! The Lord of the Gods was angry, pointing at the two people and unable to speak. His face was also red, and it was obvious that the blood was boiling. There was no way, she had never been able to do anything with the World Tree. So, he stood up and left with terrible power, flying towards the magic fortress tower. And the goblin warrior, as soon as he saw this guy leave, he also poked his head out from behind the World Tree to look ahead, but he was in no hurry to come out. Goblins are not low in intelligence. Once they encounter natural enemies, they will retreat first. There are many cases of waiting for the rabbit by the tree. Just like that, they waited for a long time. At the same time, in the magic tower fortress, Xiao Yun was not panicked when he learned that the Lord of the Gods was coming. He just sent out another mobile war fortress that had been completed by scientific research and placed it under the wall of the magic tower fortress. This thing usually has no breath, but when it is really activated, its strength will be quickly operated. The efficiency of energy conversion is greatly improved, and the combat effectiveness will naturally keep up. In addition to the strong strength itself, the fortress is now standing outside stupidly, and there is still no driver's seat. It doesn't look like something that can be driven by humans. However, the black shadow merged into it and drove the fortress without others seeing it. At the same time, after Xiao Yun finished all these things, he put his consciousness into the Great Prophet again. The place where the Great Prophet is now is still a void illusion, but compared to the previous seal, now there is more time flow, which can make people feel that time is slowly passing. This change has occurred, but Xiao Yun's Great Prophet is still trapped here. It only takes a little time to leave, but if you want to move forward, you have to think of other ways. Obviously, it is impossible now. I don't know how to get in, so I can only get stuck here. But fortunately, Xiao Yun now vaguely feels a little clue. Keep moving forward, and keep using the power of Black Shadow to spread forward. Although it feels like there is no touch and actual occupation and control, Xiao Yun's intuition tells him that this is feasible. Just after Xiao Yun did this, the World Tree wanted to turn around and look at the place behind him that he had guarded for his whole life. Finally, he turned around, but he could see the reluctance and helplessness in its eyes. This kid, after all, is going to open the center of the world. Why did he guard it for so long? Where can he go after the guard is over? Suddenly I can move. Those things I imagined before and the pictures in my head now seem to be able to touch them personally. Compared with the sense of nothingness at the end of the mission, the World Tree feels more solemn about the excitement brought by the new life. When the guarding is over, the sapling can also begin to grow in the direction of its own wishes, even if it is now a towering tree. Chapter 279 The Moving Tree. Suddenly, the huge body of the World Tree trembled violently, and there was a complex flash in its eyes. I don't know whether it is the glory after the mission is over or the confusion of not knowing what to do next. After guarding for a lifetime, I finally got what I should get. What do I want to pursue now? What I have seen and what I have not seen. The power that blocked the roots of the tree began to dissipate gradually, and finally disappeared. Feeling this power, the confusion in the eyes of the World Tree became even worse. What should I do next? It knows everything and understands everything. The knowledge in its head is given by the rules of the world. But in fact, it has only seen the land in front of it and a small number of people. The rest just have this concept in their heads. It's like knowing that this is normal common sense, nothing wrong. But there is still an idea in my heart, that is, to really take a look, feel it, and see if it is exactly the same as the knowledge in my head. Let's go, it's time. The World Tree slowly moved its roots, moved its huge body, and walked away. It left calmly and lonely, and left without even causing a trace of dust. It disappeared silently from the sight, and even the goblin warrior was stunned, staring at the back with his mouth wide open, his eyes full of confusion. The World Tree suddenly left? Why? What happened to make this old tree that has existed since the establishment of the demon clan leave directly? Boom! A violent vibration came. The goblin warrior looked at the area behind him. A mushroom cloud was slowly rising over there. And this vibration was obviously caused by something being directly destroyed. What happened to cause such a terrible vibration? The goblin warrior did not dare to go forward to see. Not everyone can enter the void illusion. However, he was very curious about what the great prophet did in there to cause such a big commotion. What happened? The World Tree actually. The demons also rushed here because of the huge commotion and the departure of the World Tree. They seemed to not understand why this happened. I don't know. The goblin warrior's originally calm mentality had been shaken by the World Tree. He was stunned by the departure of the World Tree and the vibrations from it. He didn't know what to do. Should he calm down or scream now? Pa, pa, pa. The sound of footsteps sounded, accompanied by a sticky sound, like a slime jumping on the ground. Finally, everyone saw a figure with a slow pace. The black robe on his body had been corroded by an unknown force until only a few strips of cloth were left. The great prophet was also covered with wounds. However, when he walked in front of the goblin warrior, the great prophet showed a relaxed expression and smile on his face. He was free. The great prophet, who was about to dissipate, now exists forever. This is a very complicated and unsolvable thing for the great prophet himself. I don't know how to describe it. Just like the World Tree, after completing the mission, he has a life that truly belongs to him. What should I do next? Go and see the memories that belong to me in my head? Travel around? The joy brought by the new life almost made him laugh out loud. Of course, the demons didn't know, and didn't want to know. They were more curious about what the great prophet did inside. And now they felt that the great prophet was completely different. This feeling was especially felt by the goblin warrior. What happened? The demon kings came forward to ask. Looking at their concerned eyes, the great prophet said, "The future of the demons is here." He didn't intend to say what Xiao Yun asked him to do, but just lied silently, saying that the future of the demons had arrived. Even the magic technology in his head was brought here. Xiao Yun allowed it to use magic technology and work hard for the long-term existence of the demons. At this moment, it is the real great prophet. It is true that the center of the world is the teleportation array, but now this teleportation array has been destroyed. Everything will stay in this world, there is no other possibility. At the same time, in front of the magic tower fortress, the Lord of the Gods first lurked and looked at this so-called fortress. She also knew what this place meant, a real magic forbidden fortress. But it was still a little worse than absolute defense. As the Lord of the Gods, she not only practiced magic elements, but also learned a lot of close combat, and was even stronger and more advanced than ordinary people. After looking around, except for the silly fortress at the door, there was basically nothing that could make her feel threatened. Yes, except for the fortress at the door. She could feel the danger of this fortress, but it was just danger. Instinct told her that she should be careful, but the fact was that this thing was not to be feared. With this twisted and struggling mentality, she walked directly to the Magic Tower Fortress, facing the Black Shadow Power Fortress head-on. She was not afraid of this thing at all. On the surface, this thing is a dead object, without any magic link, and there is no magic console that can be directly controlled. Except that the magic fluctuation inside makes her feel a little scared. Everything is fine. This thing is not as good as a piece of stone held in someone's hand. Warning, warning, anyone who enters the territory without permission must provide proof or explain their intentions. The Black Shadow Power Fortress noticed that there was no mark of dark power in the other party's body, and it immediately flashed a terrible brilliance, and the magic crystal flashed red light and scanned and explored the Lord of the Gods. This thing can actually move. The Lord of the Gods was stunned. She originally thought that after a probe, she found that no one had bound the magic link of this guy, that is, it could not be controlled like a magic puppet, and there was no driver's seat, so it could not be controlled from the inside. As a result, when she came here, it not only discovered her, but also looked like it wanted to fight with her. Although its magic fluctuations made her feel daunted, it was not to the extent that she could retreat. After investigation, the strength of this high tower fortress is not enough to deal with herself, at least on the surface. That's why she rushed over and faced the Shadow Power Fortress head-on. This power fortress is not the small fortress before. It is much taller and its combat power is not at the same level. The Lord of the Gods is just a child in front of this guy. Unfortunately, the Lord of the Gods didn't know, and even sneered with contempt, although I don't know what kind of magical creature you are, whether you are a dead spirit or a ghost, I warn you, you'd better get out of the way for me immediately. Otherwise, hum. Chapter 280 times have changed. The war fortress didn't make any other sounds, but saw that the Lord of the Gods didn't come forward, so it didn't mean realizing the need to fight. He held his ground as Xiao Yun said. You asked for it. The Lord of the Gods was just worried about not having a place to vent his anger, and seeing such a fool blocking his way, he had no choice but to take action. So, the Lord of the Gods took a step forward. Warning! Warning! There is an intruder! There is an intruder! Execute the third order! Cripple! The voice resounded in the ears of the Lord of the Gods. Just this broken thing? Do you have a battle plan? Just screaming here. The terrifying moving speed of the Black Shadow War Fortress instantly brought a hurricane. Before she could react, she felt a huge figure in front of her raising its fist high. The huge figure that covered the sky and the sun, and the terrifying power. So fast. She widened her eyes, her body had no time to react, and she could only watch her body being pressed hard to the ground by this fist. Crack! She could hear the sound of her bones breaking. How many years have passed? How many years have passed? She actually encountered such a thing? This is probably the first time she has been injured in all those years. No. No. I can't give up like this. I have to let these guys know that my anger can never be extinguished easily. Want to suppress and defeat me so easily? Impossible. Boom. After a loud noise, the ground shook. The noise was so loud that many people were attracted. Even some of the gods who were conquered in the city went to the top of the city to see what happened. In the city, the gods lived obediently after being conquered. In the eyes of the residents here, they have changed from high gods to friends and neighbors now. Some people may meet the god of wedding to ask for blessings when they are seeking marriage, and some guys will definitely go to the god of wealth to have a good talk when they need to open a store. Although the gods claimed to be gods, they were actually ordinary people after they came down from the throne. They also needed to eat and drink. Therefore, in the city, they could still be served with good food and drink as captives. At most, they felt a little uncomfortable as captives. Now they were suddenly released and still felt a little uncomfortable, because although they had a place to live, they had no food and water. In other words, they went from being the masters that Xiao Yun needed to support to being residents who had to work to barely make a living. They even thought about it and felt that they really didn't have the face to go back to the capital of the gods. If they went back, they might be slapped in the face. And now, after living in the Magic Tower Fortress for a long time, because of the discipline of the Shadow Legions, they have been very obedient and abided by the rules. In fact, because of abiding by the rules, they get along very well with the residents. Because of this, their originally lofty hearts have now fallen into the mortal world. Now suddenly hearing such a big noise, the originally peaceful and tranquil life was suddenly broken, and they suddenly felt that they could watch the excitement. This novel feeling is really refreshing. Maybe there are other victims who will suffer. Who are the next captives and victims? Will they be their acquaintances? Especially the other party came from the demon clan. If they can see the ugly appearance of the other party, then the daily entertainment of the gods will have one more item, and they will go to the prison to mock this guy. The gods and demons are already big enemies. I think this guy will die very miserably. Maybe there will be a lot more demon coolies in our city in the future. Oh my god! I actually started to gloat over the misfortune. I am such a bad guy. Alas, it's miserable, but I'm quite happy. Come on. Go and see which unlucky guy it is. But when these gods rushed up to the city wall with great interest and started to discuss, the god of wedding looked at the familiar figure and fell into deep thought. Seeing the other party being crushed to the ground by the fortress, the face of the wedding god turned pale. She recognized who the other party was. The Lord of the Gods. The one who once ruled the human kingdom. Now she was actually punched into the ground by the fortress. That powerful person was beaten into such a miserable state now? Boom! Another punch, yellow sand waves, and the earth shook. But this time it was obviously not as effective as before. She is the Lord of the Gods. Finally, there are gods who recognized their former Lord of the Gods. Hearing this voice, the gods who were originally full of expectations, smiles, and ridicule all looked gloomy. Obviously at this moment they finally remembered the fear of being dominated by the Lord of the Gods. Seeing the figure fighting with the war fortress, they all looked solemn. If the Lord of the Gods defeats the war fortress, they will definitely be discovered by her, and then they will be labeled as traitors. So now they are faced with a choice, that is, should they take action? If the Lord of the Gods wins, they will be executed as traitors, or even worse. But if the Lord of the Gods loses, and they help him, now it is really a dilemma. One step forward may be hell, one step back may also be hell. Why do they stupidly rush over to attack this fortress? It's what they deserve. It's what they deserve. Isn't it better to stay in the capital of the gods? Do you have to stupidly rush over and stick out your face to let people hit you hard a few times to feel comfortable? I really can't be a jerk anymore in the future. Finally, some gods made a choice and waited for good news. They have been observing that the strength of the Black Shadow Core is not weak, and now they have even created such a giant fortress. It must be said that Xiao Yun feels that he has some spare strength that he has not used. If he rashly fights against this guy, it seems not worthwhile. The Lord of the Gods is indeed very powerful, but now is a new era. Those so-called magic technology and war fortresses are not kidding you. The times are different, sir, the times have changed. The era of the Lord of the Gods has passed, and now is the era of magic technology. Even these so-called gods have learned a little bit of magic technology through osmosis. Sometimes after you have a deep contact with something, you will find that these things are very different from what you imagined, and you will also be amazed or speechless, why these things seem to be either powerful or not so mysterious. Obviously, magic technology is one of them that makes them feel that the gap is very large and amazing, and it is also very powerful, but after actually understanding it, they find that this thing is not as difficult as imagined. The appearance and composition are very complicated, but in fact, the control is very simple. Just hook your finger and the attack will go out. Chapter 281 Ragnarok. Therefore, basically no one dared to step forward, but instead felt relieved and watched the Lord of the Gods being beaten by the fortress. Ha! After a roar, the Lord of the Gods pushed away the two arms that hit him, and the fortress took a few steps back. Warning, warning, the target is resisting fiercely, start the second command, severely disabled. The voice of the shadow kept ringing, accompanied by the sound of various mechanical operations. A sense of crisis instantly emerged in the heart of the Lord of the Gods, and suddenly felt very dangerous. For a moment, she even thought she was going to die here. But as the Lord of the Gods, her first reaction was not to be underestimated, and she used all the magic elements very quickly. The huge magic circle blocked her and the war fortress in it. Voila la! Chains kept flying out, tying her and the war fortress together. Creaky, creaky. A distorted sound sounded. The mechanical fortress squeaked with chains, and some cracks appeared on the mirror made of crystal. No way. Is she going to defeat this thing? Something is wrong, something is wrong. Why did the war fortress suddenly show a disadvantage? Is it going to lose? If the Lord of the Gods finds out that they have been in this city all the time, and they are not even aware of her arrival, she will think that they have betrayed her. If this happens, the judgment of the Lord of God is no joke. The betrayer will be immortal. Does this sound tempting? But after knowing their fate, do you still think this is a temptation? Be a slave for eternity, controlled by her, driven by her. She will beat and scold you if you are not satisfied, and you can't resist. This kind of soul slave is not easy. Being tortured for eternity, this is simply too uncomfortable. So the gods were shaken. The majesty of the Lord of the Gods would not be trampled by ants like them, and the ants were still trying to survive, so they panicked. I have to go out to help. I have to go out to help. Some gods muttered, as if they were trying to convince themselves and give themselves psychological hints, and they rushed over the wall directly. There is no need to worry about the fighting power of the gods, which is very strong. Warning! Warning! The body is damaged. Activate the first command, kill. A known creature is approaching. Execute the first resident law. Kill. The voice of the Black Shadow Fortress kept ringing, and the god who rushed over burst out with his divine power to the extreme, but it was a pity that in front of the chains in the sky, it was at most the brilliance of fireflies, which was useless. And now the Black Shadow Fortress issued another desperate warning. The already weak Lord of the Gods clenched his fist upon hearing this voice, God's chain. Break. Crack. The subtle sound of the mirror breaking was heard. Although it was very small, it was clearly heard by every god who was paying attention to the battlefield. At this moment, the gods felt that their hearts were. It was like a chain breaking, and the same sound of a mirror breaking seemed to be heard in my heart. It's over, she won. We all have to die. The Lord of the Gods looked over, and as expected, her eyes were filled with rage and hatred. Of these despicable ants who had once knelt at her feet and kissed her shoes, only one was willing to come down to rescue the Lord of the Gods who had mercifully let them live. These ants betrayed their promises. They betrayed the Lord of the Gods to whom they swore allegiance. Wait, the most severe punishment from the gods will surely fall. Wait. Clenching her fists, the Lord of the Gods slowly took a step back. She only saw her casually take away the god who slowly walked up to try to rescue her, while the other gods were stunned by her cold eyes. It's over, it's really over now, she won. And she's especially vindictive. Xiao Yun's own fighting power is not to be mentioned. They never thought that Xiao Yun would use fighting power to conquer and protect this fortress. He did everything with his mind that studied magic technology. In addition, it was the Black Shadows who accompanied him that made all this prosperity possible. But now the seemingly strongest war fortress was defeated. Even if they still thought that Xiao Yun would have a trump card in their hearts, they were still panicking now. After the Lord of the Gods was defeated this time, he left. When he returns next time, the fortress will face a greater crisis. Now, the gods who did not go out are basically on the same boat with Xiao Yun. They have never seen the Lord of the Gods so angry. Usually, when the Lord of the Gods is the most angry, they only see sneers and sarcasm. Now she is so angry. I guess these so-called gods will be torn apart without a bone left? Is she injured? Otherwise, we should kill her now. Some gods looked gloomy and made a gesture of wiping their necks. Other gods looked grim, and murderous intent flashed in their eyes, saying, it is indeed a good opportunity now. The two gods cast their eyes on other gods beside or behind them at the same time, as if they were coercing and reminding them, rather than asking for their opinions. Other gods, even the humblest and incompetent craft gods, fell into deep thought. Obviously, this condition is very tempting. To be honest, they are tempted. Okay. Let's go. Let's go now. While she is not far away. We will keep chasing and killing her, and split into several roads. When we get rid of her, we can rest assured. The gods quickly made divisions and task allocations, and they had to be very efficient at the first time. In an instant, the gods set off one after another, rushing towards the direction where the Lord of the Gods fled. And when they passed the fragments of the fortress, boom! Boom! There was another earth-shaking noise. The gods were originally very anxious, but for some reason, their instinct drove them to turn their heads to see what was happening behind them. For some reason, a feeling of fear inexplicably appeared in the depths of their souls. Boom! The sound of mechanical operation came, and the huge war fortress erupted with heat energy. Its terrifying size also covered the sky and the sun, but this time it was not comparable to the fortress destroyed by the Lord of the Gods, because it was really too huge. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Even when it came to the gods only saw this guy reaching out to pick up the fragments of the fortress on the ground, and put it into its mouth with all the joints connected together like a broken lotus root, and then reabsorbed its parts and power. The useless parts were directly evaporated by the high temperature and turned into useless alchemical smoke and dissipated. It was approaching dusk, and the gods felt that the sunset above their heads was blocked, and the fear brought by the high and mighty figure resounded throughout their souls. Everyone, it's getting dark, and children shouldn't run around, right? A light voice sounded, and the gods looked at the figure standing by the city wall and couldn't help swallowing their saliva. Chapter 282 Finale. God, what kind of existence is that? Move mountains and seas, and move the stars? Or is it the mountains and seas, and the heaven and earth are surrounded? No. God is high above. Just high above. Just by looking at it, you can understand that this is God, not some rotten fish and shrimp. This man made these gods feel their helplessness, despair, and weakness. No god has ever thought about when he will need to rely on others to survive. This is the case now. Xiao Yun's fighting power is definitely not something they can fight against. If you leave, it means being an enemy, and you will die if you are not careful. Just now, the Lord of the Gods thought he was victorious, but in their eyes, he was just a defeated dog escaping. The funny thing was that this defeated dog thought he had caused so much trouble to the enemy. After the great damage, she licked her wounds in the dark after retreating, waiting for the next king's return with hatred in her heart. If she knew that the war fortress she had fought so hard to defeat was just a watchdog, and that this watchdog died because of her troubles, and the owner replaced it with another watchdog, would she collapse? Or would she feel scared and dare not fight with Xiao Yun? Miserable, too miserable. What could be more helpless and desperate than trying hard and finding that everything was just a small fight, and all the efforts were in vain? Even the gods couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of their hearts at the Lord of the Gods' current experience when they returned to the fortress. This girl is really too pitiful. If she knew what was happening now, she would probably tremble with anger. The Lord of the Gods, who had left the magic tower fortress, naturally didn't know that she was being pitied by the gods. At this moment, she just clenched her fists fiercely and flew away from the magic tower fortress with the help of a god. Damn it! I was careless. I didn't expect this ghost place to be so scary. The Lord of the Gods muttered, looking back every 2 steps, and her eyes were full of anger as she looked at the direction of the magic tower fortress behind her. If she was given a chance, she must kill all the people and gods in there. But not now, but when her injuries recovered. As for the god next to her, fortunately he could still stand up and help her at the critical moment, otherwise all the gods in the magic tower fortress would not be spared and would all die. However, what she never expected was that she searched for the breath and tracked the magic tower fortress where Xiao Yun was, but it turned out that the stone fortress at the door, which seemed to have no lethality, could achieve such a level of combat power. I thought it was revenge, but I almost got myself into trouble. When she thought about the gods behind her who might come to chase her, her heart was filled with indescribable complexity and panic. Now is the critical moment, and one careless move will lead to eternal damnation, so be careful. Speed up a little more. The Lord of the Gods looked at the god who was supporting him and urged him. The god said nothing and silently increased his speed, even though he was a little bit at his limit. Unfortunately, what they didn't know was that Xiao Yun and the gods had no intention of hunting them down, because they were too weak. At the same time, the traces of the World Tree gradually appeared in the public's view. People who received the help of the World Tree grew rapidly, and almost all of them became strong in a short period of time, but these people were only a small number. As the World Tree moved forward, the entire demon race entered a state of war alert, and even many demons joined the war and began to prepare for a new round of war. After losing the World Tree, the demons were basically weakened, and Xiao Yun's original plan was directly disrupted, but everything was still within the controllable range. The rise of the demons was inevitable, which was one of the reasons why Xiao Yun was secretly controlling it, and the desert temple in the Demon Sand Sea behind the magic tower fortress was also under his control again. Xiao Shu and Qingya were happy to be free, and they had things to do in this city. Xiao Yun himself went directly into the research on magic technology. The army of monsters marched to the tower fortress and entangled with the war fortress in front of the tower fortress. Because the great prophet controlled some magic technology, the strength of the demons was also greatly improved, and basically used magic technology to a certain extreme. The two sides came and went, and neither could do anything to the other. The kingdoms in the rear also broke out again after a period of silence, and some kingdom armies led by the Kingdom of Fire marched towards the magic tower fortress. The war of magic technology spread again, but this time, unlike before, they only had one enemy, Xiao Yun. As the army approached, the two war fortresses were one against the demons and one against the kingdom army, and basically did not fall into any disadvantage. The kingdom army was more and more shocked, because they found that there were still many of Xiao Yun's war fortresses watching the battle on the city wall, that is, as long as they defeated one, it meant that another would join the battle. As for the demons and the great prophet, they naturally knew that they could not do anything to Xiao Yun, but somehow, the great prophet had an intuition that if the demons were not active at any time, it would be the day of the demons' demise, or even worse than that. All demons might really become demon slaves. After completing the task, the real truth transmission array in the center of the world had been destroyed, and after the door to another world was slammed shut, the great prophet also got the real sense of being separated from the body and became a real great prophet. Although many people in the demons knew about his existence, they could not do anything else except guard against it. Xiao Yun's strength was obvious to everyone. On the edge of the city wall, Ai Li and Marina were leisurely lying on the beach chairs, drinking juice, basking in the sun, blowing in the wind, listening to the endless fighting sounds below, with a look of ease on her face. What is more comfortable than lazily basking in the sun? Being a god? Forget it, that high and mighty thing is not suitable for the two of them, and it is good for the two of them to take a little rest after falling from the altar. Watching the wars one after another, the Lord of the Gods, who had repaired her physical injuries and strength after a few months, could only stare blankly at the overwhelming magic missiles and a series of war instruments. A trace of powerlessness slowly emerged in her eyes. Looking at the god following her, she gently took his hand. "Let's go, I'm tired, help me walk." The god nodded, and the two turned around and disappeared in the hustle and bustle. In the fortress, Xiao Yun was also happy to lie in the studio at leisure. Crossing over, it's so troublesome. After so much busy work, it's time to get off work and take a break. Maybe when I start working again, I will have to do some more work. I have finished the book, and I will summarize the techniques. I originally thought of the good idea of the Black Shadow Core, and I also saw the term Black Shadow Core when I was reading similar works. In addition, I have indeed seen Jackie Chan adventures, and I think this thing is worth doing. I thought a lot in my mind and was moved to death. But as I was doing it, I found that I need to think more about many things when writing fan fiction, such as how to use this thing, where to use this thing, what meaning do I want to use it for, whether it is a cool point or an exciting point. Then as I was writing, I was entangled with some time points and certain plots in the original work. I was a little bit stuck in a dead end. I just felt that I couldn't let go. I was tied to the original Naruto. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't leave. I had no experience and routines to learn from when I created a path myself. I guess it was the result of my closed-door thinking. Then I made some settings and nouns according to my own understanding, and some I checked and some I didn't. The ones I checked were based on the settings of the original work, and the ones I didn't check were used without knowing why. As I was writing, I had more and more drafts. Did I know I was wrong? Of course I knew, and I knew there was a problem. But if you ask me what I did wrong, I would hesitate and not be able to say it. It was a problem, indeed, but I didn't know how to fix it. I was also very mad, and then I just made a mistake. Then I finished writing Naruto. Many familiar things changed. It felt strange, completely strange. I couldn't find a way to start with a complete system. I didn't know what to do. I was too stubborn and my mind was a little blank. As I was writing, it became fragments. I didn't think of who would be the villain in a plot. I was worried that no one would read it if I wrote it too naive. I was also worried that I would ruin a certain character and that I didn't grasp the character well. I was worried about this and that. I wanted to make the villain a little smart, but I was worried that someone would criticize the routine. As a result, I didn't know how to use the routine, so I was worried about the routine. I was a little worried. Then I worried about this and that, but in the end, I was all gone. I became autistic while writing. Until now, after I finished writing and read it again, I found that the main line, plot, character position, personality, and other things in many places were not arranged well. Until now, I am still a little confused. What is the plot? What is the setting? What is the routine? If it is just for fun, it feels boring, but it is not fun, so why do I write it? Can I write what the audience wants to see? How much effort have I made? How hard should I work? How should I put it? Just treat it as complaining about myself. After all, good and bad, I have finished writing it anyway. It is a milestone in the experience of failure and an achievement. Next, read more, learn more, and write more. I don't know how hard I will try, but I will definitely try my best. Selling miserably, XX yuan per pound. Come and buy it. Don't miss it if you pass by.